This is Graham Hill. The Graham Hill who won 2 Formula 1 World Championships. The Graham Hill who won the Monaco Grand Prix 5 times. The Graham Hill who won the Indy 500. The Graham Hill who won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The Graham Hill who battled the likes of Jim Clark, Jackie Stewart, John Surtees, Jack Brabham and Sterling Moss. The Graham Hill who brought together the Lotus team after the death of his teammate and friend Jim Clark. The Graham Hill who broke both his knees in a crash. The Graham Hill who fought back to race once again. The Graham Hill who started his own Formula 1 team. The Graham Hill who clung on a bit too long. But this isn't about him. This is about his son, Damon. Born in Hampstead Hospital on the 17th of September 1960, his dad was away competing in a non-championship race at Snetterton. When his mother called his dad at 7 AM to tell him the good news, his reply was, "Is that all you woke me up to tell me?" Damon was born with an eye infection and jaundice, and his father's first reaction to seeing him was, "He can't be mine, he's Chinese!" As a child, he wouldn't feel comfortable in front of a camera, but was often put there as the son of Graham Hill whenever a photo op would appear, including a Weetabix advert where he played a young Graham Hill and was paid £200 but made to share it with his sisters by his dad. When he was a bit older, he was tricked into appearing on an episode of the infamous British TV programme Jim'll Fix It, where apparently his wish was that he'd always wanted to start a race that his dad was competing in, which wasn't true and was just used to promote a charity saloon car race his dad was doing at Brands Hatch. Thankfully for the young Damon, his segment was presented by the legendary Bruce Forsyth rather than the man the show was named after, Jimmy Savile. But in an interview with Damon and Graham, it becomes very obvious that Graham Hill is the showman and Damon is not.
Here I have Graham Hill and his son Damon Hill. They used to live at Mill Hill and now they've moved to Shenley, which has mucked up the whole ride. But Graham, nice to see you here.
Thank you, Bruce.
And you, Damon.
Thank you.
Actually, someone say something.
Something.
All right, something. You look like you. He can't chat as much as you, can he? He'll learn. He'll learn. Anyway.
Damon also hated being singled out in any way as a special child just because his dad was famous. Obviously, motor racing was a big part of his childhood, although he didn't really understand what his dad did for a living. He would go to the British Grand Prix and Italian Grand Prix, as that one fitted in around school holidays. His favourite racing driver was Jim Clark. He loved his dad, but he was his dad, and Jim Clark was cool. And he has wonderful memories of pushing Jim Clark around the back garden on a toy tractor. Coverage of F1 on TV was very rare at that time, and the one race win he remembers seeing his dad have was the 1969 Monaco Grand Prix, live on television, Graham Hill's final race win.
Well, first of all, you've got to finish. Yeah. Then you've got to have a car that's capable of finishing, and then you've got to have a bit of luck.
When he was 6, he went to a karting event at Rye House, but was no good. Years later, he tried again at an amusement park in France and overtook everybody. He looked to his father for approval, but didn't get it. His father even publicly stating before that he did not want Damon to be a racing driver and thought that Damon was far too intelligent for that. Damon's first love was motorbikes. When his parents told him they would get him a bike, after months of begging for it, he jumped up into the air with excitement and hit his head on a low door frame, nearly knocking himself out and breaking his neck. Thankfully, he was okay, but he would always have a little pain in his neck from that day onwards. Although, this came with a catch. He was presented the bike at Brands Hatch in front of the world's press, and couldn't help but think that this great moment for him was being used for yet another photo op. But some of his most treasured memories with his dad also involved motorbikes, like clinging on to his dad's waist as they rode together, and riding trial bikes in the mountains of Saint-Tropez, where afterwards his dad put his arm around him and said, "Well done." On the night of the 29th of November 1975, Damon was watching television with his sister Samantha when a newsflash appeared with reports of a plane crash at Arkley Golf Course, but no names were mentioned, although Damon feared it could have been his dad, as they expected him to return home that night. As Damon walked out the room, the phone rang. His mother answered it. It was a journalist asking for her reaction to the news of her husband's plane crash. She hung up the phone thinking it was a prank call. Damon walked into the room and told her what he'd seen on the television, which led her to cry uncontrollably, as it seemed to confirm what she'd just heard on the phone. She then ran out the door, screaming that she must go and see him, but was stopped by police who were on their way to the house to break the bad news. Graham's funeral was held at St Albans Cathedral. There was a huge crowd, which of course included the press. In his book, Damon describes the feeling as if his dad had given himself to everyone, but not enough of himself to the family. Even when he retired as a driver, he had more work than ever with his own Formula One team. He never actually had time to be his kid's dad. An investigation after the crash found that Graham's pilot licence had not been renewed, a task which he had left to his office, so he'd been flying without a licence. This left his entire estate open to lawsuits from the families of the other victims of the crash. On top of this, Graham had borrowed money to fund his team. This led to the Hill family having to leave their home, and anything they had of value was auctioned off. After his father's death, Damon wanted to leave the Formula One world behind. He felt that his dad had spent more time with F1 than he had with his family, and wanted nothing to do with it. Damon's love of music and motorbikes was used to pull him out of his grief. He loved the Sex Pistols after watching an interview with Bill Grundy, and even goes to see them live. Damon plays bass in his own band, which was originally called Sex, Hitler and the Hormones, but was later changed to just the Hormones. In 1977, Peter Geffen invites Damon to Brands Hatch to watch a bike race. Damon had been to countless car races in his life, but this was his first bike race. And this was the first time he understood racing, and he caught the bug, wondering if he could ever actually race. But race bikes, not cars. His absolute hero is Barry Sheene, cemented when Sheene overtook Kenny Roberts at the 1979 British Grand Prix, flicking the V's as he did so.
And now Sheen's doing it. It could well be that Barry Sheene, yes, at the end of the lap, and the crowd rises, the crowd roars, and Barry Sheene leads at the end of lap 15 down to Cops. Will Hartog dropping back all the time. So the Dutchman is either tired himself, and it's quite, and look at that! Barry Sheene, with absolute effrontery, not only looks over his shoulder, but takes his left clutch hand off the handlebar and waves to Kenny Roberts. And cares Kenny Roberts' answer? Don't you wave at me, young man, because this is what will happen to you.
Just before leaving school, he has a meeting with his headmaster, where the head says to him, "I do hope you don't waste this education on motorsport." And that made him even more determined than ever to waste his education on motorsport. He enters the Kawasaki series and persuades Ron Shaw to sponsor him, and races the Yamaha Pro-Am series, which was televised.
Damon, your famous father, Graham Hill, of course, was a world champion on four wheels. Why are you racing on two?
Well, I've been riding bikes since I was 11, and I just really enjoy riding bikes. Much more exciting than cars, I think, anyway.
So you actually no aspirations to move on to four wheels?
No, not really. I'm very keen on racing bikes. They're very exciting to ride and to watch.
You had a full season last year racing, and then this year things have gone wrong. I believe this is your first race in the Pro-Am race.
That's right. I haven't actually raced since last year. It's all going to be very exciting, I think.
Yes, we shall follow his progress with a good deal of interest.
Whenever he raced, his mother made him wear his father's St. Christopher necklace for luck, and he would wear it for every race throughout his career. His mother also made him enroll on a business studies course at South Bank Polytechnic, which he hated. But in 1981, a young girl asks him for a ride home on his bike as she was visiting a friend who lived near Damon. Her name was Susan George, but her friends called her Georgie. And a few months later, they started dating, and a few years after that, they would be married. Damon would drop out of the business studies course and started working as a dispatch rider for Apollo Dispatch, which would work perfectly for him as he could ride his bike all day and was actually getting some decent money which funded his racing. He would get a call on his CB radio telling him where to go. His call sign was Sugar27, and over Christmas the company would make their riders dress up as Santa Claus. In 1983 he gets a scholarship offer to the famous Winfield Elf Racing School by Mike Knight after a conversation with Damon's mother. Damon was hesitant, as his love was with bikes, but he could not turn down a free scholarship to this school. The school had previously been home to some of the greatest French motorsport talents of all time. Jean-Pierre Jarier, Francois Sauveur, Patrick Depailler, Jacques Lafitte, Patrick Tombe, Didier Pironi, René Arnoux, and of course, Alain Prost. He qualifies for the end-of-year final, but a couple mistakes cost him the win. But now, Damon had finally been bitten by the car racing bug, and could also clearly see the long-term prospects from racing cars compared to racing bikes. Those prospects could potentially keep him out of ever needing a proper job. He was almost instantly offered a race at Brands Hatch in a Formula Ford 2000 car. The press caught wind that Graham Hill's son was racing and descended on the race, including TV here for interviews.
But how much car racing experience had Damon had?
Very little. I went to a school in France in April. I did 3 days there. And then I went back in October for another series of 3 days, and then went back for the semi-finals at school, and that's it.
You're on the verge of your first race. What are your hopes and ambitions? Where do you want to go in the sport?
Well, I'd like to go to the top. I don't expect to put in a dazzling performance today on my limited experience, but I'm doing this 5-race series, and I'd like to, by the end of it, at least have some decent placings.
We're all talking about you today. We're naturally talking about your father. I think we're all tending to lose sight of the fact that motor racing costs money, and a lot of it, even Formula Ford that you are in. Where's the money coming from, and are you looking for sponsorship, or are you happily set up already?
Well, in a sort of a gesture to my father, who started here racing at Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch has sponsored me for this 5-race series, but as far as next year goes, I'm going to have to find the money, somewhere in the region of £30,000, to go racing Formula 4 2000 competitively.
Are you worried about today? You're getting a most incredible amount of exposure.
I'm not as nervous as I have been for bike races, I must admit. I've done a few pro-ams that have had me quite biting my nails sort of quick. I haven't had time to think about it, man.
Damon really struggled with the car that was far too advanced for a rookie, and he failed to qualify for the race. But there was so much buzz that the race organisers put him in anyway, something that Damon found incredibly humiliating. In the race itself, he spins and stalls. He had caught the bug, but on the big stage, he had fallen flat on his face with the whole world watching. He desperately needed money if he wanted to continue down the track, but for many, he seemed like he would never be able to return their investments, and he ends up back on the bikes, entering club races at Brands Hatch, trying to fully fund everything himself from his dispatch job. One morning in 1984, he goes off to Brands Hatch after having a row with Georgie, as she didn't want to get up earlier to go. He enters the race, and for the first time, he wins. He recalls the race as the most important of his career, as it was the one where everything finally made sense. Everything he had ever learned racing coming together to get him over the line in first place. From there, he wins every bike race he enters and becomes the champion of Brands Hatch. He then gets an opportunity to race in Formula 3 with West Surrey Racing, but he needed £150,000. In an act of desperation, he writes a letter to George Harrison from the Beatles, who he knew was a huge motorsport fan and had known his dad pretty well, with both of them being big stars in the 60s in the UK. And to Damon's surprise, he receives a phone call from George Harrison agreeing to give him sponsorship, and he would race in Formula 3 in 1986. But he was told he would play number 2 to Bertrand Farley.
I remember back in the 80s asking people about Damon, whether they'd put him in a team Formula 1, and not many people would, at that time, they're all looking for the Sennas and stuff, and, they forget that people can be, some people are just out front like Senna, and there's other people who just need a bit of practice.
Before the season started, they were testing, and Farley would have a big crash. He was rushed to hospital, but there wasn't much they could do, and he would pass away around a day later. The team owner of West Surrey Racing was called Dick Bennett, and he had been the team owner when Senna drove for the team to the F3 Championship and the Macau Grand Prix victory. he had said that Fabi was just as good as Senna, and the death of Fabi affected Bennett so badly that he removed the team from Formula 3 that year. Around this time, Damon will get his first Formula 1 test with Benetton before the 1988 season at Paul Ricard, the exact same circuit his dad's team had tested for the final time before their death. Also that year, Georgie gets pregnant, and they put down a deposit on a house with the money inherited from Damon's grandmother. Oliver is born on the 4th of March, but is born with Down syndrome. Damon is now a freelance racing driver with a newly married wife and a newly born disabled child. They also have a mortgage to pay, and he still has racing debts. For many, this would be the sign to give up. But for Damon, he dove headfirst into racing all sorts. In 1989, he's in a saloon car race at the Saab Championship. He competes at the British Touring Car Championship and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. In that race, at one point, there's a mistake whilst refueling the car, and the car is set on fire with Damon inside it. But the fire is put out, and he's sent back out in the race. Unfortunately, though, his race would come to an end on Sunday morning when the engine gave up. For 1990, he gets a full-time Formula 3000 seat with Middlebridge, which is where he would first get the attention of Patrick Head at Williams, after he watched Damon get pole position in Hockenheim. Mark Blundell had been the Williams test driver, but he was moving to Brabham for 1991, so the role was available, and he told Damon to go for it, and he did. Meanwhile, back home, Damon became a father for the second time as his son Josh was born. Damon continued in Formula 3000, but Middlebridge would become Eddie Jordan Racing. Damon's first test for Williams is in the FW13B, and it ends with the car on fire as they tried to get their head around the new semi-automatic gearbox. Damon was kept busy in the winter of 1991 though, testing Williams' new active suspension around the Brands Hatch short circuit, which he could do at 34 seconds a lap. But 1992 would be the first year for Damon to enter Formula 1 properly, as Middlebridge now owned the Brabham team. After 3 races of the 1992 season, Giovanna and Matthew's sponsorship money never appeared, and they had a seat available and offered it to Damon. Brabham had been a legendary team in Formula 1, winning 4 drivers' titles. Firstly for their founder Jack Brabham in 1966, then Denny Hulme in 1967, then for Nelson Piquet in 1981 and 1983. But by 1992, they were a very different team. In the previous 6 years, their best finish in the Constructors' Championship had been 8th, and in 1991 they had scored only 3 points, which was actually an improvement on the 2 points they'd scored in 1990. But there was something special here for Damon, as not only did this serve as an opening to the world of Formula 1, but it was also a team his father had driven for between 1971 and 1972, which had been another tough time for the team. Many told him it was a bad idea, and he barely fit into the car as his legs were crushed against the side of the chassis. For many races that season, both Brabham drivers would fail to qualify for a race, but then we got to the British Grand Prix. Both Brabham cars had issues entering qualifying, so Damon and his teammate Eric van der Poel had to share the spare car in qualifying. Damon qualified 26th. This was only the second time a Brabham had qualified for a race that season after 9 races, and the first for Damon after 6 races. To truly put into perspective the difference between the Williams and the Brabham, Nigel Mansell was on pole that day, 7.4 seconds quicker than Damon.
Well, it's extra special to start at Silverstone, not only because I'm a British driver and it's the British Grand Prix, but also because my father retired here in 1975, announced his retirement, so it's rather a neat coincidence that I'm starting off where he left off.
Do you remember much of that day?
Yes, I can remember quite clearly that he did a sort of lap of honour and everything, and everyone gave him a big cheer, and it was very emotional for him. He loved racing and he didn't want to stop doing it, but at the time I was quite pleased he retired.
When you moved into the frame yesterday, position number 26, what were your feelings about the weather forecast that was around? Were you sort of praying for rain overnight or what?
Well, we were perilously close actually to not being in the race. I think if it had been dry today, then there would have been every chance that Zanardi particularly, who had little time in the Minardi, could have found some more time, and we would have found ourselves 27th and out of the race. So I must say I was quite relieved when it rained.
How tough has it been this year with Brabham?
It's about as tough as it can get, I think. They haven't got much money to do the job properly, and there's a lot of motivation within the team to make sure that Brabham doesn't just sort of disappear in a cloud of smoke. It's been very hard from my point of view because I haven't been able to show, I think, what I'm capable of doing, and hopefully tomorrow at least I'll get a better chance being in the race.
What do you really expect from the race tomorrow?
We're going to finish the race. That's our aim. I think that if we finish the race, we stand every chance of getting a good result. We're not going to be competing very strongly, but at least if you're in the race and finish it, you've got a very good chance of building from there.
During the course of the year, you've certainly proved what you can do as a test driver with all that mileage with Williams. What are your feelings about what Nigel has achieved over the last couple of days, particularly with that lap yesterday? Did that surprise you as well?
Yes, completely. I mean, I've tested quite a lot here in the same car, and I know what it takes to do a lap time not quite as quick as that. And he has just shown that he actually, I think, is probably the fastest driver around at the moment. He and the machine are just working together superbly, and together with being at the British Grand Prix, he's pulled out something extra special.
How much time do you spend in a weekend like this in the Brabham camp compared to the Williams camp? Is it a bit difficult for you?
Well, I pop in to say hello at Williams and have a cup of tea and stuff like that, and chat to Patrick and Frank, but my work has got to be centred around the Brabham pit, so I spend a lot of time down there and don't get to sort of eat until sort of 7 o'clock. We stop qualifying at 2, but there's still a lot to do, so we sort of work on setup, and a lot of the time is spent in the back of the truck.
Big day for you now tomorrow. How are you actually going to prepare for it?
Well, I'm going to go and get some food later on and some rest and work again on a race setup. And if I get a good night's sleep, then everything should be good for tomorrow. I'll be sort of full of energy and ready to go.
Delighted to see you in there at last.
Thanks very much.
Enjoy the day and finish.
Cheers. Thank you.
In the race itself, Damon is lapped by Mansell 4 times, but he actually finishes the race, albeit in last place. When Mansell wins, the crowd went crazy and invaded the track. Not only was this a British winner winning the British Grand Prix, but it was Mansell's 28th win, a British record at the time. Damon was unable to get back to the pits and had to leave the car at Club Corner. He had not been quick, but he had finished his first F1 race, and it was all up from here. Although, watching Mansell's success brought mixed emotions to Damon, as being lapped 4 times obviously isn't fun, but it was by a car he was helping to develop, and he knew that if he could prove himself there was a chance that Williams could call him up to the main team and he would be in that car. Damon would make one more appearance in a race in 1992 at Hungary, which would be the final race for the legendary Brabham team. For 1993, Williams brought in Alain Prost, which annoyed Nigel Mansell, who had had a bad experience with Prost as a teammate during their years in Ferrari, so he decided to leave and joined IndyCar. Riccardo Patrese had been the other driver in the Williams in the 1992 season, but he had already signed with Benetton, thinking that the Williams seats would go to Prost and Mansell. So all of a sudden, Frank Williams had an available seat on the best team in the grid. Damon had a test with Williams that Frank Williams would watch over before making his final decision. Damon set off early to the airport to get to Estoril. Didn't realise that the Chelsea Football Club had been playing that day and traffic was dreadful with all the roads blocked. After running through the airport and making it just as the doors were about to close, he sat down on the plane and realised the date was the 29th of November 1992. 17 years to the day that his father had tested his own Formula 1 car and then got on a plane and never came home. And now, Damon was sat on a plane, setting off for a different test that could change his life forever. The test went well, but Frank still hadn't made his decision. Damon had been given an offer by Ligier, but they couldn't wait any longer and told him they needed a decision, so he told them no. And now, any hopes of him competing in Formula 1 were left entirely in the hands of Frank Williams.
Tous les ingénieurs ici me poussent pour Damon. Oui, monsieur. Nick a beaucoup de talent et très vite, mais les mêmes voix me disent que ne connaît pas beaucoup de la voiture, ne comprend pas beaucoup de la voiture.
A couple weeks later, he got the call from Frank, and he was in. Damon had been fully familiar with the team, and that made the decision easier for Frank. But perhaps more importantly, he cost a hell of a lot less than Martin Brundle, who had been another contender for the seat. Also a plus was that he brought in some money of his own, after striking a deal with Sega, who a few months previously had brought out Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which had been enormously popular. And they added Sonic legs to the Williams livery and sponsored the race suits and helmets, even having both drivers equipped with Sonic's white gloves and red shoes. Philip Lett, the managing director of Sega Europe, also asked if they could put the image of Sonic in a ball on the wheel of Frank Williams' wheelchair, which did not go down well. But overall it was a great deal for everyone involved, and proved Damon's skills that he had acquired through his junior career in getting sponsorship deals done. The signing of Damon had been seen as controversial. It was the first time in F1 history that a driver would be driving for the reigning Constructors' champions within their first 2 seasons in the sport. And there were many in the sport who felt they deserved the opportunity, as Damon at that point had only competed in 2 races and not even scored a point. Ayrton Senna had been in discussion with Williams, but had been outmanoeuvred by Prost, who did not want to team with the Brazilian ever again. There were also drivers such as Alboreto, Butzar and Berger, who had multiple wins and all had over 120 races in their career. There were drivers like Jean Alesi and Johnny Herbert, both who'd had multiple podiums with around 5 seasons worth of F1 experience under their belts. There was even this young German guy who had only had 2 seasons in his career, but had already won a race and got a podium. And there was the amazing Andrea de Cesaris. All of these had very convincing arguments to be made as to why they deserved the second Williams seat. Many saw this as British bias, and Frank Williams wanting to give the seat to a British driver, whilst others saw it as the control that Prost now had over the team, as he would be in the best car after years of competing against teammates such as Lauda, Mansell, Rosberg, Arnoux and of course Senna. They thought he'd like to have an easier time with inexperienced teammates who wouldn't give him a hard time as he tried to become a 4-time world champion. But no matter what the argument may be, and no matter who it upset, the seat belonged to Damon, and it was his job to prove them all wrong. Traditionally, the number 1 goes to the world champion, but as Mansell had left Williams, the team were not allowed to use it, so Prost had number 2, and Damon had to use number 0. It was only the second time the number had been used in F1, after previously being used by Jody Scheckter in the 1970s, when the drivers would be given out numbers almost randomly. But since car numbers had been given based out on championship order, this had not happened. So Damon wasn't even a number 2 driver, he was a 0.
I've got a lot of learning to do. I've only done 2 Grand Prix, so in that respect I've got an awful lot of learning to do. But I feel good about myself and about my driving, and what will be in that respect. I'm going to give it 100%.
In the year that Prost had been away, Senna had really upped his game. Mix this in with Prost getting the Williams seat that Senna wanted, it made Senna more determined than ever to make sure Prost had a challenge for the title. And the two started on the front row for the first race of that year. The last time they started together on the front row was Japan 1990. Meanwhile, Damon started 4th, his best starting position of his career, which wasn't too difficult considering his previous best was 25th. But he had Michael Schumacher in the Benetton ahead of him. Prost would not get a good start, but Damon would, and found himself second behind Senna. But in a matter of corners, it all went wrong.
Season will be underway. Prost on the right, Senna on the left of the picture, and good start by Senna and Hill and Schumacher. Prost is floundering, De Cesaris and Comas are stranded on the grid. It's Senna into the first corner in the lead with Hill second, and Hill in a big spin. Damon Hill almost collecting Alain Prost.
Damon's spin had nearly collected his teammate, and a few laps later Damon's race was all over as he collected Zanardi. It looked as though his critics had been correct, after a dreadful opening lap saw him fighting outside the top 10 when the crash occurred, while his new teammate won the race by a landslide 1 minute and 20 seconds ahead of Senna in second. At the next race in Brazil, Damon qualifies on the front row, but he's almost a second behind his teammate Prost. When the rain comes down, Prost slid into the gravel trap, and Damon found himself leading an F1 race for the first time.
And there is Prost! Prost has gone off! Well, this is quite amazing.
Although when the rain stopped, McLaren got the changeover right. And when Damon pit, Senna had undercut him and took the win in front of his home crowd. But Damon finishes second and gets his first F1 podium, with the trophy presentation being done by Juan Manuel Fangio, the only driver his father Graham had ever seen as a hero. The third race of the year was at Donington, and the world was about to witness a Senna masterclass.
The 76th lap, European Grand Prix. Prost gets away well, so does Hill, so does Schumacher, and Wendlinger is coming up well. Senna is crowded out and is down to 5th position, and Wendlinger is up into 3rd place ahead of Schumacher. Brilliant start by the Austrian driver in the black Sauber. Prost leads, Hill 2nd, Wendlinger is 3rd, and Ayrton Senna is up to 4th position ahead of Schumacher and challenging Wendlinger as they go round the right-hander into the old hairpin. Senna is up to 3rd.
And after being crowded at the start, a quite brilliant couple of corners by Ayrton Senna. Tremendous stuff. He muscled his way back into contention at Redgate. He's going inside Damon Hill. And Senna into 2nd place already. And he's giving it absolutely everything in the wet part of the race.
So now, as before, the two great rivals, and that's Andretti. He's done it again on the very first lap. Andretti is out as he was in Brazil, as he almost was in South Africa. 3 Grand Prix and he has only done 3 full laps, and so out is Wendlinger. So 2 retirements already, Michael Andretti and Carl Wendlinger, and Senna goes through into the lead. He's passed Alain Prost, so the McLaren leads, Prost 2nd, Hill is 3rd, a tremendous gap between the 3rd and 4th cars.
Yes, and that must be caused by the Andretti and Wendlinger incident. We would assume that they may have had a coming together. We'll try and find out.
Senna now led the championship by 12 points from Prost in a slower car, and he made sure everyone was aware of that in the post-race press conference.
Had you got the best car in the conditions, do you think, today?
Well, you know what driving is like. You've been there. I think I had a good car. I don't know whether it was the best, but I had a good car.
In Imola, Damon is on the front row again, this time less than a 10th off Prost, as he takes the lead and pulls away.
On from the start, the Ligier into the wall. Blundell, huge impact there behind the leaders as they thunder through round at Tosa.
After pit stops, he finds Senna and Prost right on the back of him. At one point, he hits a damp patch which costs him the lead, but it will be a brake issue that cost him the entire race. Although, he walked away more confident now, knowing he'd been able to attack and defend against both Prost and Senna, if just for a brief moment. Although Senna was not too happy. He had now also retired from the race and requested a meeting with Damon, as he was not happy with how Damon had defended. Senna said to him, "You're young now and new to the sport. You should be careful. Think about the way you drive. It's a dangerous sport." Damon, who was the same age as Senna, responded that he would bear that in mind, but he didn't think he'd done anything that he hadn't seen Senna do before. The next race is the Spanish Grand Prix, and Damon goes for it and pushes Prost for the win before an engine failure.
And in 2nd place, Prost from Hill, and a little spurt of smoke from Damon Hill's car as he went into that corner. So I think Damon Hill's in trouble. Prost hurtles on round at full speed, but Damon Hill is not in sight. Damon Hill coasting into the pits, and very, very slowly indeed. There was just a spurt of smoke from the rear of the Williams Renault. And as far as Damon Hill was concerned, that's the end of the Spanish Grand Prix.
In the press conference after his victory, Prost says he doesn't know if he'd be able to keep Damon behind.
Yeah, it was going quite well, especially, first part of the race he was leading, and then I was able to overtake him. My car was handling well, and then he was catching me and pushing me a lot. I had some problems with the traffic sometimes, but the car started to jump a lot, and I was very tired. I mean, physically I did one of the most difficult races I've never done before. And it was going quite well, and if he was able to keep the pace like this, it would have been very difficult for me to stay ahead.
After that race, Frank Williams reminds Damon that Prost is the #1 driver, and Damon is there to support him. Next was Monaco, where his father had been so successful, winning 5 times before. Senna had equalled that record the previous year, and in qualifying Damon had a tough time, qualifying 4th. But after a disastrous race for Prost and a retirement for Schumacher, Damon would finish 2nd and have to stand next to Senna as he broke his father's record and won the Monaco Grand Prix for the 6th time, and in the press conference afterwards congratulated him on behalf of his father. A few weeks later at the French Grand Prix, Prost's home race, Damon takes his first pole position.
I pushed extra hard in the on the final lap because I only had 1 lap left on that run, and I found a good balance in the car and scrabbled through the chicanes and found a bit more time there, and got a good lap time. And it was a little bit heart in mouth, but that's how it happens when you want to go quickly.
But at the pit stops, he's slowed down by Andretti in the McLaren, and when Prost pits, he takes the lead. Damon hunts him down, which is when he gets a radio message saying, slow down. The next race, though, was Damon's home race at Silverstone.
You receive orders from the box not to pass Prost, right? What is the position here for Silverstone?
You just asked the wrong question. I said I'd answer one question. I can't answer that one.
This time, Damon can win.
Yes. Yeah.
After a poor start for Prost, Damon takes the lead, and he looks to be doing the thing his father never could, winning the British Grand Prix, as he was leading until lap 41 of 53.
Sandro Zanardi, who is in 5th place. Senna is 4th, and there's an engine blowing it. It's Damon Hill. What can I or anybody say? Damon Hill's Renault engine has expired on lap 42 of the British Grand Prix, and the Englishman is not going to win. Well, his body language says bitter disappointment, and you can understand that. Alain Prost goes into the lead, 7.3 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher, as Frank Williams impassively looks at the bank of television monitors in front of him. And I can just imagine what's going through Damon Hill's mind now. What have I got to do to win a Grand Prix? Leading on the 42nd lap. And if there's one thing that the Renault V10 engine is famous for, it is reliability. And still Damon finds time to wave to his fans. He must be nearly in tears, I should think.
In Germany, Damon leads until lap 43 of 45, when he has to retire with a puncture. It looked like between bad luck and team orders, Damon would never get that first win.
I've been unlucky in the last couple of races, I think, and it can't keep happening. That sort of thing can't keep happening. So I have to keep on producing the performance, and hopefully the luck will change and go my way.
1 year earlier, Damon had qualified 25th here for Brabham, on what would turn out to be the final race for the team. If a lot had gone wrong in some of Damon's races so far that season, everything was about to go right. He did better than 25th this time and qualified 2nd with just Prost ahead. But Prost stalled on the grid on the formation lap and had to start from the back, so Damon was now the leading car on the grid. It was a great start for Damon, whilst both Senna and Schumacher struggled. 17 laps later, it would be over for Senna, and 9 laps after that, it was race over for Schumacher. So after 26 laps, 2 of Damon's biggest rivals were out of the race, and Prost was still making his way through the grid from the back. All Damon had to do was finish.
In the lead in the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Well, I'm not going to make any prediction at all at this stage, but Damon has done a superb job. He got off the line first, he got into the lead, and that's not easy. He was on the wrong side of the circuit, and he had the likes of Senna and Schumacher around him. He then drove absolutely superbly all the way. He's got Berger, incidentally. He's just trying to unlap himself. Whether or not he will bother, I don't know. We'll have to watch while that goes on. But Damon's got everything right. Behind him, yes, he's letting Berger go by. That's very sensible. Damon does not want anything to go wrong, clearly, here. It's going to be a very overdue win if he gets it, but thoroughly well-deserved. Behind that, Riccardo Patrese, well, he's largely inherited second place, it has to be said, but having said that, he's made no mistake. And that's not what happened last year when he led for Williams, but well out in front. He spun at the first corner, indeed just about where Johnny Herbert, or the one after that actually, where just after Johnny Herbert spun. Berger, very robust drive from him, very tough and a very deserved third place, with Brundle not being able to take Warwick, but two very sterling drives from the British drivers.
Damon Hill is approaching the end of the last lap of the Hungarian Grand Prix. He's coming down to that slow left-hander, which is turn 12. Then he's only got to do the short run up to the double right, turns 13 and 14. Damon Hill exits the last turn at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and he does indeed see the checkered flag. And Damon Hill, as his great father Graham did before him, wins the Grand Prix, not here in Hungary, Graham, but Damon's first Grand Prix victory has been a brilliant one. And he knows it, and he shows his victory salute to the crowd. Well, Damon has driven an absolutely immaculate race after the bitter, bitter, cruel disappointment of having a win snatched from his hands in Britain and then in Germany.
And not only did he finish, but he finished in dominant style, as he lapped everyone but second and third place, and finished over a minute ahead of Patrese in second to take his first ever race win, nearly 25 years after his father's last.
Yeah, I want to dedicate this race to the Hill family, whether you're past, present or future. Well, the difficult bit, it was not going fast, it was trying to maintain a pace at which you were comfortable that you weren't going to make a mistake. And it's very, very difficult to judge that pace. It's an extremely slippery circuit, there's a lot of rubber. You have to pass cars, well, a lot of the time I had to pass cars down the pit straight, and they obliged me to go on the dirty track, and that meant that the tyres were picking up rubber and growing a bit. But I mean, other than that, everything was fantastic. The pit stops worked perfectly, and I had a lot more luck than I've had in the last few races, which is important.
To prove it wasn't a fluke, he won again at the very next race at Spa, fighting off both Michael Schumacher and Prost. It was the 50th win for a Renault-powered car. He arrives at Monza looking for his first 3 wins to be 3 in a row. After a decent start, he was hit by Senna, and both drivers fell down the order and had to fight back through. By the time Damon is back in second, Prost is 18 seconds in front of him, but he was cutting into the deficit so much he got a call from Williams to say he was not to fight Alain. Damon continues to hunt him down, and doesn't even know himself if he will listen to the team order or not when he catches Prost, but the decision was taken out of his hands.
Alain Prost is now on his 49th lap out of 53, and there's an engine. What happened? Is that Prost? Yes, it is Alain Prost, and Damon Hill is surely going to go through into the lead. There's Comas, he's gone through. We need to have a look at Damon Hill, because Alain Prost, just as Ayrton Senna did those years back, not once but twice, is retiring in the closing stages of the Italian Grand Prix, and Damon Hill goes into the lead. This is a replay, and Damon will have seen that great plume of smoke from Prost's Renault engine, and that put oil, incidentally, all over the camera lens and potentially his visor.
Damon took a 3rd race win in a row, and 3 very different race wins, from a dominant victory in Hungary to fighting at the front in Belgium, and now coming through the grid. It moved Damon to 2nd in the championship ahead of Senna, although Prost was far ahead in the lead, and Damon had already been told the championship was not for him to win, so 2nd place would be the title he was fighting for, and he was fighting for his future. He'd only had a 1-year deal with Williams, so if he wanted to stay, he needed to impress. Ultimately, Prost wins the title and Senna finishes 2nd, with Damon just 4 points behind. But he'd done enough to impress the F1 world, and most importantly, impress Frank Williams, who renewed his contract for 1994. But in 1994, he would have a new teammate.
I think I gotta have a word with Frank for some team orders.
Ayrton Senna signed with Williams for 1994, and according to Damon, Senna's plan was to win a couple more championships with Williams to equal Fangio on 5, which at the time was the record, and then move to Ferrari, which is where he wanted to end his Formula 1 career.
No illusions that's going to be an easy thing, because it's going to take a lot of effort to get used with a new machine and new people, a new team of team members, and I'm ready to start the work.
Damon Hill is upbeat and looking forward to the season ahead.
Thrilled to bits to have Ayrton in the team with me.
And now that Prost had left Formula 1 for good, Senna was the undisputed star of Formula 1. But there was another driver who was on the come-up. Damon describes Michael Schumacher at the time as a great white shark lurking below the surface of Formula 1, waiting to strike. Not only was his talent undeniable, but he was opening F1 to a huge market in Germany. In 1993, the Belgium Grand Prix saw 20,000 extra German fans attend thanks to the rise of Schumacher, with Schumacher having taken his first win there the year before. Germany had not had a lot of success in the F1 world. They were still waiting for their first world champion. Before Schumacher, it had been 17 years since a German driver had won a Formula 1 race with Jochen Mass. The closest a German driver had ever got to a world title was Wolfgang von Trips, who missed out on the 1961 title to Phil Hill after a fatal crash at the penultimate race of the year. F1 bosses knew that the big money rivalry would be Senna versus Schumacher, the past versus the future of Formula 1. So a lot of regulation changes were made to try and make the field more competitive, and more importantly, try and make sure the Williams didn't run away with the title, like Prost had done in 93 and Mansell had done in 92. Narrower rear tyres were implemented, and refueling was brought back for the first time since 1984. And more importantly, for Williams, active suspension was banned. And for Damon, once again, before the season started, he was told he was to play a supporting role. The title belonged to Senna. During the pre-season, it's clear that Williams is still quick, but there are issues with the car, including porpoising. For the first race of the year, it's Senna's home race in Brazil. He puts it on pole whilst Damon struggles, over a second and a half behind in fourth. But Senna was not able to tame the unruly Williams in the race and spun whilst chasing Schumacher, not finishing the race, whilst Damon would get second, albeit a lap behind winner Michael Schumacher, and completely exhausted. At the next race, it was another pole for Senna, but he wouldn't even complete a lap before being hit by Häkkinen in the McLaren and then by one of the Ferraris. 2 races, 2 retirements, but more importantly, 2 wins for Michael Schumacher, although Senna suspected some foul play and accused Benetton of circumnavigating the traction control ban, as he said Schumacher's engine sounded different as he accelerated out of the first corner. As we headed into the San Marino Grand Prix, the pressure was on. Schumacher had 20 points, Damon had 6, and Senna had 0. Senna had also struggled to get comfortable at Williams. It'd been a while since he had to move teams, leaving Lotus for McLaren 5 years previously, but his reputation had massively improved since then, with many now seeing him as the greatest Formula 1 driver of all time, and many in Williams being completely in awe of him. And because of that, through no fault of his own, he became unapproachable with many within Williams, including Damon, not wanting to bother him or waste his time. So not only was the results not there, but Senna found himself to be quite lonely in his new home. Rubens Barrichello found himself second in the championship at this early stage in the Jordan, but he had a very scary crash in practice. Senna went to the hospital to check on his young countryman, and when Barrichello woke up from the accident, he found Senna sat next to him, crying.
You've seen the movements? No, he's alright. He's alright. He's shocked, of course, but he's alright.
The next day, Roland Ratzenberger crashed in his Simtek car, but he would not be as lucky as Barrichello. It was clear from the images they were seeing in the pit lane that this was serious. Again, Senna took part of his role as face of Formula 1 to go to the crash and try and help in any way he could. Ratzenberger, though, had passed away, and it was the first fatal accident in Formula 1 since 1986, when Elio De Angelis died whilst testing a Brabham.
I was sitting in the car, I watched it on the monitor, and when they start to put him out of the car, I could see that it's gonna be very, very bad. And of course, in our job, you're sometimes a bit prepared to see situations like this. But as it was another Austrian driver, as it was a personal contact to a person, it's even worse. And I know you should not make a difference between a driver what you know and a driver what you don't know, but it affects you in a different way.
The session was resumed, but many did not take any further part in it, with Senna refusing to go back out. He was told by the FIA that if he did not go back out, he would be disqualified. Senna refused, and the FIA did nothing. That night, F1 medical delegate Sid Watkins, who was a close friend of Senna, tried to get him to walk away from the sport, saying he had nothing left to prove, and the two could walk away and go fishing. Senna contemplated the offer for about a minute, but said he had to go on. Senna knew how many people loved him, especially in Brazil, and he saw it as his duty to race for them. Ayrton Senna's nephew, Bruno, described it as if he felt like he'd been given a gift by God, and he had to make the most of it. Before the driver's briefing, Senna grabs Damon and asks him for his help. Senna and Berger both spoke to each other the night before about the safety car not being good enough, as it was too slow and they were losing tyre pressure. Senna had developed a reputation for speaking out against the FIA, so he didn't want to be seen as an instigator. He had got Berger to agree to start the conversation in the briefing about the safety car. Then he wanted Damon to ask some follow-up questions, which he agreed to do. After the briefing, Senna was approached by Niki Lauda, who asked him to bring back the Grand Prix Drivers Association. Senna said he would think about it and they would speak to each other at the next race in Monaco. On the way to the grid, Senna talked with French TV, including their newest presenter, Alain Prost.
A special hello to our dear friend Alain in France. We all miss you, Alain.
With Prost now retired, the two are finding out that they might actually like each other. And when Prost was asked about the message before the race, Prost said it's nice and unexpected. We just say hi and shake hands. Like we said, by the end of the year, since we're not rivals on the track anymore, there is no reason why not to be friends, or not to be friends in the future. Senna started from pole for the third time in 3 races, but there was a big crash at the start, with Leto stalling on the grid and Lamy going right into the back of him that brought out the safety car, an Opel Vectra. The safety car would come in, and then 2 laps later.
I just saw him plunge off to the right, and Senna has joined Pedro Lamy and JJ Leto in a shattered motor car. You can see the debris on the right. What on earth happened there? I don't know. Whether it was a sudden loss of downforce for some reason, but Senna is still in the car.
We really should be seeing some medical attention coming quickly here to the Williams with Senna. His head is he's very still in that car. The car has clearly gone straight on. This is a little bit like the accident that beset. He really needs help in that car. There is nobody coming to him at the moment. Yes, his head's moved. I think I just saw his head move a little bit then.
The race was red flagged, and the longer the red flag went on, the more uneasy the pit lane felt. Damon asked for updates over the radio, but even the team didn't know what had happened at that point. In Argentina, Juan Manuel Fangio, who was watching, turned off the television. As he said, as soon as he saw the crash, he knew what had happened. Sid Watkins was on the scene instantly as he tried to help his friend. In the crash, part of the front right suspension had snapped off the car and smashed through Senna's helmet, giving him severe head trauma. As they lifted him from the car, he was still breathing and his heart was still beating. He was airlifted to hospital, where he died, although there is some contention as to when Senna should have been declared dead, with some believing that he should have been declared dead at the crash, but in Italian law that would have made the Imola circuit a crime scene, and that would have caused the cancellation of the race. The paddock was in a state of shock. This was the first F1 fatality during an F1 race since Riccardo Paletti at the 1982 Canadian Grand Prix. Although none of them knew for sure at this point, they knew the signs weren't good for Senna. Later at the hospital, doctors found an Austrian flag hidden in Senna's overalls, with his plan to win the race and wave the flag in remembrance of Ratzenberger. In the weeks following the crash, Damon spent a lot of time with Adrian Newey and Patrick Head, with them asking him a lot of questions to try and get to the bottom of what had happened, with Frank Williams telling him he had nothing to fear and to tell them exactly what he thought. The true reason for Senna's crash will never be known. There are multiple theories. The theory that seems to be the most widely accepted is that the steering column broke and caused Senna to lose control and crash. The investigation afterwards found fatigue cracks on the steering column, and it had previously been modified, although it's impossible to know 100% for sure if the column broke before or because of the crash. Adrian Newey thinks that he may have had a puncture from debris, but this has never been proved. Michael Schumacher, who was behind Senna, said the car did look to be unstable in the laps before the crash. Damon's verdict was that the car was bottoming, and mixed this in with a low tyre pressure due to following the safety car. When Senna hit a bump going into the corner, he lifts and applies opposite lock. But due to the bottoming, a sudden return of grip causes the car to snap back, and then Senna is just a passenger as he heads towards the wall. Understandably, the Williams garage was shocked into silence, and distraught, Damon felt that he should say something but didn't really know what, and decided just to let the mechanics know that he trusted them and that they shouldn't feel bad.
I, unfortunately, was in the Williams garage when Ayrton Senna had his accident. It wasn't a nice place to be, and there is still a very, very somber atmosphere in there. The first thing that happened, very correctly, was that they switched off the television monitors feeding the Italian television pictures. They had no desire to see the aftermath of the accident there. They were slightly more encouraged when it was clear that Ayrton was in a position to be removed from the car. And it's now the practicalities. There are members of Ayrton's family within the garage, and arrangements are being made for them to be taken away from the circuit and taken to the hospital and to follow events from there. But the mood, as you can expect down here, Murray, is one of not great enthusiasm for the race to come, if indeed there is to be a race to come.
The race was restarted, and Damon was told that as a precaution they would be turning off the power steering, which made the race even more difficult than it already was. And so, with some of Senna's blood still at the Tamburello corner, the show went on, and the race was restarted. Damon said that for him the race was a blur, not remembering most of it, with his thoughts obviously elsewhere, and having to fight the car with no powered steering. Schumacher took his third race win in a row, but the podium was not a joyful affair.
Certainly no good feelings. I mean, just win the race, but I can't feel satisfied. Can't feel happy. I mean, what happened this weekend, never have seen something like this. Not just one thing, so many things. The only thing I can say about this is I hope we learn from this. I think there is a lot to learn from, and we have to use this. And things like this, they shouldn't happen without taking the experience from it. It's the only thing I want to say and I can say.
Damon sat with the team to try and understand everything that had happened to cause the crash, and admits that if he didn't fully understand it, he would not have got back in the car, especially with a young family at home. When Damon gets home from the race, he gets a call from Jackie Stewart, who was all too familiar with many of his competitors dying too early, including Damon's father, who had been Stewart's teammate at an earlier point of Stewart's career, and had been a close friend. Stewart tells Damon to fly to Brazil and go to Senna's funeral, as if he didn't, he would regret it. 3 million people turned up for Senna's funeral, as he was given a state funeral by the Brazilian government.
Policial preocupado com ela, não precisa se preocupar não. O povo brasileiro está sofrendo e sabe sofrer. Aí o nosso Ayrton. Segue teu passeio, campeão. Segue pelas ruas da tua cidade. Segue perto da tua gente por quem você correu e buscou com muita garra as vitórias. Segue pela tua cidade, campeão. Segue pelo chão da tua terra. mas sempre perto do povo por quem você lutou tanto.
The funeral brought back a lot of memories for Damon of his own father's funeral, and up next was the race that was synonymous with both Graham Hill and Ayrton Senna, Monaco.
Pega a grande reta. Agita os corações de todos nós. Cresce a vontade da vitória. Acelera Ayrton Senna. Passa na curva, passa na reta. O coração da gente bate mais forte. Ele busca a vitória. Se ele é o terceiro, busca o segundo. Se ele é o segundo, busca o primeiro. Ayrton Senna na reta da vitória. Faltam poucos metros para a grande vitória de Ayrton Senna. Faltam poucos metros para que nós, brasileiros, tenhamos a certeza de que o caminho da honestidade vale a pena, que o caminho da dedicação vale a pena, que nós, brasileiros, valemos a pena.
What didn't help Damon's mental state was when he entered the Williams truck to change into his overalls for practice, he found Senna's clothes, including his Senna t-shirt that he had changed out of before the San Marino Grand Prix. Nobody had touched it, and it served as an accidental reminder to Damon that when he leaves that changing room, he might not come back. Carl Wendlinger has a big crash during practice, and after not one but two fatal crashes at the race weekend previous, many wondered if F1 was entering another fatal era. Wendlinger was in a coma for several weeks, but thankfully made a full recovery. The Grand Prix Drivers Association was brought back by Niki Lauda. A Brazilian flag was painted over the pole position box and an Austrian flag in second place for Ratzenberger as the drivers gathered for a moment's silence. Williams only entered one car to the Monaco Grand Prix, so all the hopes of the team were on Damon, and unfortunately it did not go well. Starting fourth and fighting Hakkinen for second to Sander Vogt, there was contact that ended both of their races before the end of the first lap. And as a result, yet another win for Michael Schumacher, who had 4 wins from 4 races and led the championship by 30 points from Gerhard Berger in second, while Damon was third, 33 points behind, and with 10 points for a win, any hopes of anyone challenging Schumacher were fading quickly. Formula One went into a state of panic, trying to make the sport safer, including a reduction of downforce. But during a private test of this, Pedro Lamy had a huge crash and broke both his kneecaps. Then Andrea Montemini, who joined Simtek as Ratzenberger's replacement, had a big crash during the practice of the Spanish Grand Prix, breaking his left heel and right foot. For the Spanish Grand Prix, Williams brought 2 cars and entered their test driver David Coulthard, who was very much seen as a placeholder with Williams, wanting to find a big name to replace Senna to carry their title hopes, with Damon feeling that the team should get behind him for their title hopes. For the race, Schumacher gets pole, but Damon is able to get his first front row start of the year. It looked like it would be 5 wins from 5 for Schumacher, but gearbox issues opened the door for Hill, who took the victory. The win uplifted the Williams team, and in a very strange coincidence, he had repeated the feat of his father, who also took victory at the Spanish Grand Prix. Graham Hill taking his victory at the Spanish Grand Prix just over a month after the fatal crash of his teammate Jim Clark, while Damon took his victory at the Spanish Grand Prix just under a month after the fatal crash of his teammate Ayrton Senna.
Such a difficult month or so, and this race was very important to do well, and to win was better. To be honest, was better than I expected to do. Michael put up as usual, and as to be expected, a tough fight. But this victory must go to everyone at Williams, who have been through terrible times, and also to all the fans of Ayrton Senna who I met in Brazil, who said to me that they would be very pleased to see the Williams team do well. And so to everyone, thank you very much.
At the Canadian Grand Prix, Damon had a bad start and falls behind Coulthard, who shows no signs of letting Damon through. Damon gets on the radio to tell the team to tell David to move aside, which they do, but at that point Schumacher was too far gone down the road, and Damon had to settle for second. This left a bad taste in Damon's mouth, especially after how he'd been treated as a second driver to Prost and Senna, and really believed that after a win in Spain, the team should get behind him as number one. The feeling would get worse when Coulthard was pushed aside for the big name the team were looking for, and the return of an old friend. Nigel Mansell returned to Williams as the reigning IndyCar champion, and the man who had the most races, wins, poles and podiums for the Williams team. He was the star the team wanted, but he was only able to do a handful of races due to competing in F1 and Indy at the same time, so the car was shared between Nigel and Coulthard throughout the remainder of the season, although they had a bigger problem, which was Michael Schumacher. He seemed untouchable. Despite Damon getting another pole, Michael got another dominant win at the French Grand Prix. But up next was the British Grand Prix, and Damon managed to claim pole position, this time by 0.003 from Schumacher. Then on race day, the Schumacher mind games began before the lights even went out. On the formation lap, Schumacher overtakes Damon and shoots off in the distance before giving the place back as the cars line up on the grid. Coulthard stalled and a second formation lap was needed, and Schumacher did the exact same thing again. Schumacher was given a 5-second stop-and-go penalty to be taken within 3 laps, but Benetton ignored it. For ignoring the penalty, Schumacher was shown the black flag and disqualified from the race, but the Benetton team chose to ignore this as well. Benetton said that they had misunderstood the penalty and thought they could take it whenever they wanted. So the stewards rescinded the black flag on the understanding that Schumacher would serve the penalty.
Into the pit lane comes Schumacher. This is it. Now, is it for a stop go or is it get out of the car, you naughty boy? Your race is over. Into the pit lane comes Schumacher. And is he driving through? He's turning off. Yeah, it's a stop go. Stop. 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 Go.
Meanwhile, whilst all this was going on, a race was happening. A race that Damon was solidly in control of, and he won the British Grand Prix, a feat that his father had not been able to achieve, and they partied the night away in the paddock playing music of Eddie Jordan's band.
Damon Hill exits the last corner and the crowd roars, and rightly so, and he wins the British Grand Prix. Magnificent! Damon Hill wins. Michael Schumacher, there he is coming home.
Post-race, Schumacher was disqualified again and handed a 2-race ban for ignoring the black flag. Benetton obviously appealed this decision, so Schumacher was able to race whilst the FIA fought over the decision.
performance, not just this afternoon but all weekend. You've just had your hands on one of the most famous Grand Prix trophies, one which up until today the Hill name did not adorn. How do you feel?
I feel absolutely superb. I think this is the best day of my life. I just can't, it's like a dream. I want to thank everyone at Williams who have gone through misery this year, and it's been a very tough year. I want to thank everyone at Williams for getting behind me and making this possible, because without them and Renault and our sponsors, it just wouldn't have been possible. And also to everyone that came today and everyone that supported me over the weekend, and especially Georgie and the family. And it's just the best day of my life.
Well, you've been hyped up all weekend and dictating the pace at every moment. Do you draw a personal power from the home crowd here at Silverstone?
I had a lot of motivation to win this race for a lot of reasons, not least because my father never won it. And I'd like to say that it's some sort of indication, I feel, and I don't know quite why it happened, but I mean, it's just a dream come true that I've won the British Grand Prix, and I feel like that has completed the little hole that my father left in his record, and I'm sure that he'll be delighted, and I think it's a wonderful thing, and I really don't know what more to say.
Well, you made a great start, and probably some of that personal power's behind it. How did the race actually go from there on?
Well, it was a pretty tough one. We seemed to always lose out to Michael in the pit stops, and when he was ahead of me, there was a lot of trouble with traffic, and I was losing a lot of time in traffic. It was very difficult to get through the traffic here today, and it was going to ebb and flow. And I mean, I caught up with Michael, and then he came in the pits for a 10-second stop-go penalty, I think it was. And then I knew after that I had to push quite hard because he'd probably be pretty pumped up after that. And indeed he was.
Well, turning to you, Michael, a controversial British Grand Prix. We were all aware for some time that you had a time penalty, but you carried on. Why was this?
I don't know. I mean, the first message I got is that I have a 5-second penalty, which I got mentioned in the way that it would be just added on after the race, and not really a pit stop penalty. And then after my first pit stop, I got told I have to come in for a 5-second penalty. And I'm really unhappy about this, I have to say. I have really to make a big compliment to Damon. To win here in front of the home Grand Prix is something special, and
Thanks, Michael.
The next race was Schumacher's home race, and the police received an anonymous tip that someone was going to shoot Damon if he qualified ahead of Michael. That weekend, Damon would be escorted to and from the circuit by police and moved to a hotel under a different name. Damon qualified ahead of Michael and didn't get shot. The big shock, though, was that Damon and Michael were on the second row of the grid, with the Ferraris on the front row, Berger on pole, Alesi alongside. Neither Hill or Schumacher walked away from that race happy, though, with Damon being hit on the opening lap and having to pit before finishing 8th, and Schumacher retiring on the 20th lap with engine issues. Damon's trip to the pits wasn't the worst of the day, though, as Benetton had removed a filter from their petrol pipe in order to fuel the car quicker, and so far it had gone well, but this weekend it didn't. Jos Verstappen walked away with some singed eyebrows, and the message had been sent that Benetton were prepared to do anything to give themselves the advantage, and it was a big advantage as Michael Schumacher got straight back to winning ways in Hungary. Before the Belgian Grand Prix, Damon received a signed football shirt from the Brazilian football team, wishing him luck in the season against Schumacher, with a lot of Brazilian fans thinking that if Senna was not there to win, they wanted his teammate to. And he would in Belgium. Technically, Schumacher had won the race, but he was later disqualified due to plank wear, so Damon was lifted from second to first. Damon was handed a lifeline in the championship. He was still 21 points behind, but was about to be handed the biggest lifeline possible, as Schumacher's ban would not be overturned, and he would miss the next 2 races. Damon would win in Italy and win in Portugal, and as we entered the European Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher made his return, now leading the championship by just 1 point. In the race, Damon is leading, but after his final pit stop loses all pace and has to settle for second, with Schumacher taking the win. Damon's lack of pace at the end of the race was a mystery to him, but they later found out that his fuel gauge was faulty and the car was reporting low fuel, so at the final pit stop they put in twice the amount of fuel that had actually been needed, massively weighing the car down and costing him about half a second a lap. Not that that reason went down well with Frank Williams or Patrick Head, who still weren't seeing Damon as a suitable number one for the Williams team. Damon's feeling of not being trusted by the team to deliver a championship was growing, and it was not helped by the return of Nigel Mansell at the European Grand Prix and the announcement that he would race for Williams for the final 3 races of the year. Mansell would tell the team some issues he'd had with the car, and the team would listen, despite Damon telling them the exact same issues for the most part of the season and being ignored. In Japan, Damon qualifies second and Mansell is fourth, but after qualifying, Patrick Head shows Damon a speed graph to show that Mansell was 20 km/h faster than Damon in 130R. This was the final straw for Damon, who was done feeling underappreciated and told himself from now on he is no longer doing this to try and please Patrick and Frank, but instead doing it for himself. It was a very wet race in Japan, and the race was red flagged after Martin Brundle span off, hitting a marshal who was dealing with a different car that had spun off. Thankfully, the worst of the marshal's injuries were a broken leg. Schumacher was 6.8 seconds ahead, and the rules of that time stated that that advantage he had at the time of the red flag would be added back on at the end of the race. Damon would take the lead when Schumacher pitted twice to Damon's once, but Schumacher now had fresher tyres and would be hunting Damon down. As long as he was within 6.8 seconds, Schumacher would take the race win. Damon drove his heart out at the wet Suzuka to try and build up the gap. Entering the last lap, he was exhausted, and he said a little prayer to himself, saying, "Ayrton, if you're up there, I could do with a little bit of a hand here." From there on out, he described the final lap as a complete out-of-body experience, as he just watched as his hands moved the steering wheel, with what felt like no input from him, in a state in which he'd never entered before and would never enter again.
Damon Hill wins the Japanese Grand Prix and takes his 6th win of the year.
The championship lead was down to just 1 point. It all came down to the final race in Adelaide. 2 drivers, Schumacher and Hill, both going for their first world title.
I think Michael Schumacher.
I'm sure Michael Schumacher. The problem is I can't see into the future.
Tough fight, but Michael will take it in the end.
Hill. Damon Hill. I think Michael
Schumacher will win.
You have not, the crystal ball.
So Damon Hill,
Piquet. Because he's the quickest.
I will. Oh.
Damon, I think he deserves it.
Damon Hill.
Damon Hill will win the World Championship.
Ferrari, the best.
Schumacher. Hill, definitely.
Schumacher will win it. Schumacher will win the World Championship.
As Schumacher led Hill by 1 point, it was all really down to who would finish in front of the other to decide the title, or if both failed to finish, the title would go to Schumacher. Nigel Mansell claimed what would be his final pole position, with Michael Schumacher alongside and Damon Hill in third, although Mansell had huge wheel spin off the start that let the title challengers take the top 2 spots, Schumacher leading from Damon, although Damon would keep in touch until...
And that looks, Schumacher's off, Schumacher's lost time, yeah. Hill goes by. Oh, out goes Schumacher. The German is out of the Australian Grand Prix, and Damon Hill only has to keep going to be world champion of 1994, but can he keep going in and have his car repaired? You see the front left wheel is locked up. Now Nigel Mansell is going to go through in the lead, but he was 54 seconds behind the leaders. Damon obviously extremely worried. The question is, how long is it going to take them to repair whatever damage there was? You see he's been in the pits for about 16 seconds now. And Mansell has gone through, Berger has gone through, Alesi has gone through, Häkkinen has gone through.
And Patrick Head there's looking at that left front wishbone, Hill shaking his head. He knows in his heart of hearts that it is all over.
as Damon Hill retires from the Australian Grand Prix, and the 1994 World Championship has been won, a lot of people will say by default, by Michael Schumacher, as the Benetton team congratulate each other. They know that their man has won the World Championship, but he doesn't, because he's still stuck behind the wire. Well, an amazing development. Schumacher would not want to have won the World Championship that way, I am utterly sure. With a heartbroken Damon Hill watching the monitor, this is bitter gall. He's won 6 races this year. If he could have just finished 2 points ahead of Michael Schumacher, he would have been world champion in only his second full season of Grand Prix racing.
The ending was controversial to say the least, but the result stood. It hadn't been the first time a title had been decided by a crash, and it wouldn't be the last. Damon had to accept it, and he did find solace in a way that the championship should probably never have been his to begin with. Entering 1994, he was the support driver to Senna. The title should have belonged to Senna. And after everything that had happened across the year, Damon and the Williams team were happy the season was over and they could try and put it all behind them. Damon may have lost the world title, but he did win a different big achievement that year, being voted as the BBC Sports Personality of the Year.
Damon Hill. Terrific. Well done. Very good indeed. Many congratulations.
Thank you very much. I think if you were to get 3 or 4 million people out of bed at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning, 2 weekends on the trot, you'd hardly expect them to vote for you to win an award. But that's what happened, I think. And so I'd like to say thank you very much indeed to all those people who have voted for me for this award. It's a very, very prestigious award, and any sportsman would have to be extremely, extremely proud to receive it, which I am. I have to say also that this season, it would be completely amiss for me not to say that my season was immeasurably influenced by the loss of my teammate, Ayrton Senna, and it's with that in mind that I receive any award like this year. Thank you very much.
All eyes moved now to 1995, where Damon planned to go for it all again. Williams chose to go for youth over experience for Damon's teammate in 1995 and gave David Coulthard the full-time seat, whilst Mansell would move to McLaren for a rather ill-fated and short-lived run that would see the end of his Formula 1 career. Damon was still not seen by the Williams team as the number one driver, the team treating them as equal.
And I know that the Williams team have spent an awful long time preparing this car. The FW17 is the product of many, many hours work in the wind tunnel by Adrian Newey, and with the technical directorship of Patrick Head and all the people at Williams. They put in such a lot of effort into this car. It's going to be a race winner, and I fully expect to be a championship winner as well.
At the first race of the year, it starts perfectly with Damon on pole by 3/10 of a second from Schumacher, and Hill was leading when disaster struck.
I was very comfortably in the lead and looking very good for the race because I'd only done one stop and only had one more to do, and Michael had an extra stop to do than me, so things were looking very good. And then I lost a gear on the back part of the circuit, second gear, and then coming into the first corner here, accelerating down the hill, and the gearbox, I think the gearbox seized up, but I'm not absolutely sure yet what happened.
The next race was the Argentinian Grand Prix, seeing Formula 1 return to Argentina for the first time since the Falklands War. Hill would miss out on pole from his teammate David Coulthard, but the next day it was Hill celebrating after getting his first win of the year.
I'm really delighted. 10 Grand Prix victories. It's great to break into double figures, and it just gets better. I and it's great also to break your duck for the 95 season.
Then it was a return to Imola. The race took place 1 year to the day that Ratzenberger had died, 1 day off the year anniversary of Senna's death. Changes have been made to the circuit, including adding a chicane to the Tamburello corner where Senna had crashed a year earlier. Damon takes an emotional victory that meant for the first time in his career he was now the World Championship leader, as Schumacher failed to finish.
I'd just like to say that, you know, we've had a year since Imola, when everything was pretty bad for everyone, and Williams, and now we're back again and we won the race, and I think that's a nice thing to have happened, and I'm very pleased for that, for everyone at Williams, that we can come back here and come away feeling different to last year.
It seemed like 1995 had picked up right where 1994 had left off. It was Hill versus Schumacher. But it all very quickly started to go wrong. Schumacher taking victory at 3 of the next 4 races. Damon having to settle for second place twice. Then at the British Grand Prix it was advantage Hill. He'd got pole and Williams had got the strategy call right, with Schumacher on a 1 stop and Damon on a 2. Damon came out after his second and final stop and was second to Schumacher, but began to hunt him down for the win. It was all in his hands. Until...
Damon's lost it, has he? Stops! Off! They're both off! Who's that? Is that a Tyrrell or is it... It's Schumacher, they're both off, they're both out.
Well, I think looking at that, Damon Hill was really far too far away. Let's have another look now. This is through the 150 miles an hour bridge corner. Look, he's a long way away from Michael Schumacher. I don't know quite what was going through his mind there, but certainly Schumacher braked relatively early, but Schumacher turns in. Damon really has committed himself in a big way to come up the inside there, and unless Schumacher had some kind of a problem that we don't know about that caused him to brake very early, and he was certainly braking a little bit early. I don't think his handling of his car was that good, but that was, to my mind, far too much of an opportunist manoeuvre, I'm afraid, for Damon Hill there. There were still 14 laps to go of the British Grand Prix, and if there was a time for that kind of do or die manoeuvre, it was going to be a lot later on in the race than that. And I really find it, I think probably Damon saw Michael slow and thought he had half a chance and committed himself. Let's have another look there. He comes up the inside, but he's going too quickly. He just cannot stop. He's committing himself too early. That's the way it looked to me.
Also at this time, Georgie was heavily pregnant, and the due date was the day of the race. Professor Sid Watkins told Georgie that the medical facilities at the Grand Prix were more than capable for the birth of a child, and she made sure he knew that that would not be happening. Thankfully, the baby wasn't born at the racetrack, and Damon had his first daughter, Tabitha. It was a very good distraction from Formula One, and from the mounting media pressure, who were asking if Damon was actually capable of taking it to Michael Schumacher. The next race was the German Grand Prix, and Damon puts on pole again and leads after the first lap, but his race would not go much further than that.
But then disaster. Suddenly the rear end of the Williams got away from Hill and he careered out of control into the tyre barrier. The crowd stunned into silence immediately, but then bursting into expressions of delight.
Hill made sure to make up for it at the next race in Hungary, where he took pole, took the fastest lap, led every lap, and won, taking a Grand Slam, something that he could say he had done that his father had never been able to do.
This is the best victory I've ever had. He actually beat Michael hands down, and the team did a brilliant job all weekend, and it was a race I had to win, and I won it, so I'm absolutely delighted. And of course, Michael not finishing is a bonus, so I think it's a bit of a payback day for me, and the atmosphere out there is tremendous as well, so it's a fantastic day.
Elbows were out in Belgium as Schumacher and Hill diced over victory once again.
The lead at the Belgian Grand Prix, if not sooner. He's looking for a way past. Schumacher blocks his path. Now, this is the chance for Damon Hill. This is where I said. But Schumacher's going to try and cut him off. Hill is alongside him and goes through. No! Schumacher's still marginally ahead. Pushes Damon Hill sideways, retaining his line.
And it got even closer in Monza.
Between a top car and one of the lesser ones. And Hill hits Schumacher and they both go off. They both go off. This is a repetition of Silverstone.
amazing. Taki Inoue, I don't know whether he got in the way, but Hill attacked, saw his opportunity. Schumacher running up to the Williams. Now, is he going to have words with Damon Hill? And the crowd is going wild with delight because they know now that Alesi is second. Damon Hill in the car and Schumacher shaking his head in disbelief now.
Damon would have another crash 2 races later at the European Grand Prix, and Schumacher was streaking away in the championship. At the exact same time, Coulthard was getting quicker and quicker, getting his first win at the Portuguese Grand Prix. But unlike Damon had to do, DC was not here to play the supporting role, and the two were allowed to fight. The Pacific Grand Prix was 3 weeks after the European Grand Prix, and it would be the race that saw Michael Schumacher be crowned as world champion for the second time, with Damon settling for third, missing out to both Schumacher and Coulthard. Japan was next. A year on from one of Hill's greatest drives, this would be his worst, spinning off again and not finishing the race. In the 2 weeks between Japan and the final race of the year in Adelaide, Damon goes on holiday with Georgie and they discussed how he had been completely in his own head and down on himself, and he needed to bring back the attitude he'd had 1 year prior, before Suzuka, where he said he was going to do it for himself. The championship was over for 1995 and he had to move past it. There was still 1 race to go. He would have to go and prove himself all over again. Damon got pole from Coulthard in second, but Coulthard would lead after 1 lap with Damon chasing him down. Thankfully for Damon though, it was about to become a hell of a lot easier.
Into the pit lane. Oh, my goodness. David Coulthard smashes himself out of the Australian. I have never seen that before. He comes into the pit lane and into the wall and blows his chance of winning for Williams. What an absolute disaster for him.
Damon drove off into a dominant lead, eventually winning and lapping every single driver twice. He had equalled an F1 record for the largest winning margin in the history of the sport, first set by Jackie Stewart back at the 1969 Spanish Grand Prix, a feat which is yet to ever be repeated again. Many look at 1995 as a huge failure for Damon, and the main reason for some of the decisions that Frank Williams would later make, and he undoubtedly made costly mistakes in multiple races, but there are some incredible highlights here. The Grand Slam in Hungary, the record-winning margin in Adelaide. He finished second in the championship with the second most race wins with 4, second most fast laps with 4, second most podiums with 9, and Damon actually got more pole positions than any other driver that year. And maybe most of all, he got his head in the right place as he exited 1995 and entered 1996. During the off-season, the BBC put out a piece on Michael Schumacher, which featured an interview with the American performance coach Mary Spillage, who compared the body language of Schumacher and Hill. The main focus was in the winning celebrations. Schumacher jumped on the podium whilst Damon looked down on the ground. Damon called Mary and asked for her help, so she came and visited him and gave him a set of rules to follow. Number 1, focus on your job. Number 2, look for positives in whatever happens. Number 3, don't get distracted by the press, but if they make inaccuracies, correct them immediately. Number 4, always come across as upbeat. Number 5, don't invite the world to pile on top of you. And number 6, don't say more than you need to say. He would take these rules into the next season, 1996.
Go! And Damon Hill leads into the first bend.
Murray.
There's been a shunt. It's Hill.
Murray, we're just out for a quiet pizza. Stop commentating.
Sorry.
We'll have a pepperoni, please. Hill orders a Pizza Hut pepperoni and cheese stuffed crust. It's got a delicious ring of cheese and slices of pepperoni baked into a thinner crust.
And here comes the pasta.
It's a pizza, Murray.
Hill's going for it. And he spun his pizza through 180 degrees.
Pepperoni and cheese stuffed crust from Pizza Hut. It'll turn around the way you look at pizza.
And Hill finishes second again. He's lost it. He's out of control.
There are a couple big moves on the grid for 1996. Firstly, the reigning double world champion Michael Schumacher left his home of Benetton, taking Ross Brawn with him to Ferrari, hoping to bring Drivers' Championship glory to the Scuderia for the first time since 1979. Ferrari had only managed one race win in 1995 thanks to Jean Alesi, and they didn't look like they had improved much in 1996, so Damon's Schumacher problem may have temporarily solved itself. And David Coulthard had been closing in on Damon by the end of 1995, but Coulthard had left the team, choosing to join McLaren, who had not won a race since Senna was with them in 1993. So for Damon, his two biggest rivals had chosen to go to slower cars, and the Williams car looked to be really strong. As long as he kept it together, there was no one between him and the title. Williams signed a rookie to partner Damon, that rookie being Jacques Villeneuve, who had won the Indy 500 and the IndyCar Championship in the year prior. Much like Damon, racing was in Jacques' blood, being the son of Gilles Villeneuve. Unlike Graham Hill, Villeneuve had never won an F1 world title, but for many, he was one of the greatest to never win the title. And much like Graham, he had also died far too soon in an accident at the Belgian Grand Prix in 1982 when Jacques was 11 years old. As Jacques was a rookie, Williams didn't really know what to expect from him, and for the first time, Williams treated Damon like a number one, especially Adrian Newey, who worked closely with Damon to make sure he was as comfortable as possible inside the 96 car. The team found out very quickly what Villeneuve was capable of, with him getting pole in his very first race, becoming the first to do this since Carlos Reutemann in 1972. The race was stopped after a huge crash from Martin Brundle, and when it restarted, Villeneuve kept the lead, with Hill behind, but Hill remained calm and waited. Villeneuve hit a curb and damaged an oil pipe, which sprayed oil all over Damon's car and allowed Damon to get past and take the win, the perfect start to his championship challenge. And this was his 14th race win to equal his father's record.
You know, this business of following your father into motor racing in an attempt to compete with him is false. You know, there's no way I could compete with what he did. It was a totally different era, totally. I am, in many ways, just carrying on the family business. I'm pretty thankful he wasn't an accountant. No offence meant to accountants.
The next week, he beats his father's winning record at a wet Interlagos in a race where Niki Lauda would say he had driven like a god. He makes it 3 from 3 with a win in Argentina. Damon struggled at the next race at the Nürburgring though, only managing 4th, whilst Villeneuve would take his first race win. But Damon was back to winning ways again in Imola. Next was Monaco, the track that had made Graham Hill famous, but the one Damon had not been able to win at, with a best result of 2nd in 1995 and 93. Schumacher had pole on the day, the second of his Ferrari tenure, but as the rain fell, the lights went out and Damon was able to take the lead into Saint Devote. After an uncharacteristic mistake from Schumacher, he was out, and Villeneuve had qualified down in 10th and was trying to make moves at the track where it's famously hard to make moves. So Damon's biggest rivals were out of the picture, and all he had to do was keep the car in one piece and he would win the race.
Clearly he wants to win every race, and smoke out of the back of the Williams. This is going to be the first time that the Williams Hill's failed to finish this year. Damon Hill out of the Monaco Grand Prix. He was destined not to win this race, and my goodness, the Englishman's heart will be plunging to his boots. Flames out of the back of the engine, and Damon walks away. Oh, look, you can see the anguish.
This was Damon's best chance at winning the Monaco Grand Prix, and a loose bolt in the engine had thrown it all away. Although with his new philosophical outlook, he thought of it as if he would never win the Monaco Grand Prix that his dad did, and he'd won the British Grand Prix that his dad had never done, so they were kind of equal. The race turned out to be one of the most chaotic in F1 history, with eventually only 3 cars finishing the race, and the win going to Olivier Panis in the Ligier, the one and only win of Panis' career, and the first win for Ligier since 1981. A win which would be the final for the team. Next would be the Spanish Grand Prix, and the rain fell hard again. Damon sat on pole position, and there was a serious thought of cancelling the race due to the weather, but Bernie Eccleston made sure the race went ahead at the scheduled time, not wanting to risk upsetting the broadcasters and potentially costing him some cash. Damon's race would not last long, as he joined the long list of drivers who failed to finish that race. But while many struggled, Michael Schumacher excelled and was putting on a show in what many consider to be his greatest ever drive.
He enters now the last corner, and Michael Schumacher wins the Spanish Grand Prix after an absolutely superlative drive to give himself 10 World Championship points, to give Ferrari 10 World Championship points, to bring the great Maranello concern back right to the front of Formula One.
He took his first win for the Ferrari team, win number 1 of what would go on to be 72 with Ferrari, in what will become one of the most dominant driver-team pairings in the history of the sport, and would see him win 5 World Championships in a row, something which only he has ever done, to add to his previous 2 in Benetton, becoming a 7-time world champion.
And a brilliant race for Michael Schumacher, who exits the chicane for the 53rd and last time to win the 2000 Japanese Grand Prix and the World Championship for the 3rd time, to give Ferrari and Italy their dream. Michael Schumacher wins. Michael Schumacher is world champion.
You will remember where you were the day you saw a racing driver become a 5 times world champion. I grew up hearing about Fangio and I thought no one will ever do that. But Michael Schumacher's done it today, and he wins his 61st Grand Prix, and he's a 5 times world Formula One champion. When Michael Schumacher became the first 6-time world Formula One champion, without a shadow of a doubt, it's the greatest achievement in the history of Formula One racing, and it's been done by this man. But Michael Schumacher gets his 7th Formula One World Championship. I would have thought, here he comes through the final corner. He started this Grand Prix in 6th place. What an absolutely phenomenal drive by Michael Schumacher. He was helped by mistakes by the Renault team, but it's given him the victory.
But that was all to come for Michael, as right now the Ferrari was not quite good enough for the championship contention, but he had showed everyone, yet again, that when it was, he was ready. And speaking of the championship, Damon was back on the top step next time out in Canada, the home race of his teammate, at a circuit named after his late father. Unluckily for Villeneuve, this would be the closest he ever got to winning the race in 2nd place, the only time he'd get a podium at this track. Another win would come in France, but it seemed all was going incredibly well for Hill, who led the championship by 25 points, although it seemed a storm was brewing in the background.
Well, I've got a good chance, but I really think you have to consider that, you know, the points can disappear very quickly. You only need 1 DNF and suddenly 10 points disappears, and there's still a lot of races left, but I'm off to a good start. I have to keep the pressure on.
Before the British Grand Prix, Ron Dennis approached Georgie and tells her that Damon should look for another drive next year, as what Frank was doing was wrong. This cryptic message from Ron left both Georgie and Damon scratching their heads. At the race, the left front wheel bearing of Damon's car fails and sees him go off into the gravel and out of the race, whilst Villeneuve wins. Revenge for Damon winning his home race. Although the relationship between Damon and Jacques was a good one, which is surprising for teammates who were 1st and 2nd in the championship, things just seemed to be going well in the Williams camp. Damon arrived at the next race in Hockenheim and finds a copy of Autosport, which said that he would be let go by Williams at the end of the year. He thought that this was a lie and had a go at the journalist who wrote it, Andrew Benson, but it would turn out to be true. It was just that Damon was the last to know, even Ron Dennis trying to warn him a few weeks prior.
I don't have anything to give you, I'm afraid, that will tell you anything. I think it's all a question of you waiting a little bit more. Can you say
whether you spoke to Frank about it?
Well, of course I have, yes. I've spoken with Frank. And
have you made progress?
It's an ongoing discussion, and I think that things are going well on that front, but it's not the main topic on my mind. I don't think that I want to comment on conjecture. I think you have to appreciate that at this time of the year in Formula One there is a lot of guessing as to what will happen in the future and where people will end up. I'm aiming to win the championship, that's my goal, and my future will be very much dependent on how things go this season. I've invested a lot in this season with Williams, staying with Williams and generating a good atmosphere in the team and working with the boys and working with the engineers and the designers and with the sponsors, and I very much felt part of the team this year, and we've won the Constructors' Championship. We're going to win the Drivers' Championship either way, and I don't see any reason for changing just for the sake of it. There's a lot to be said for driving for a team that produces such a competitive car. So thank you.
Did you start that rumour about Damon not driving for you next year if he asked for too much money? Would you be capable of such a thing?
I could never think of anything like that. But you're talking really about the press publicising his alleged financial requirements for 1997, and the same press, I presume, pretending they'd spoken to me.
Damon never got a reason as to why Frank didn't give him the contract for 1997. He and many others presumed it was because of the mistakes in 95 that caused Frank to feel like he couldn't trust Damon as a driver that could fight for a title. But surely the start of 96 had proved this all to be wrong. Also mixed in would be Rothman's leaving Williams and being replaced by Winfield cigarettes, which paid a hell of a lot less, and Williams having to cut costs somewhere. And German driver Heinz-Harald Frentzen brought a deal with Sonax, which would help the team fill in some of the deficits left from Rothman's. Not that Damon yet knew that Frentzen was his replacement. Some in the press would say that Damon got too greedy and asked for too much money, but at this point Damon was not even involved in the contract discussions at all and left it up to his lawyers, so he had not actually asked for anything. Maybe leaving it up to the lawyers had been another reason that Frank didn't want to make the deal. Whatever the reason was, Damon would have to get his head down, as not only could this be his one chance at the championship, but could also be his last year in Formula 1. Gerhard Berger dominated the race in a Benetton, but luckily for Damon he would suffer an engine failure and Damon would take the lead. He could only manage second in Hungary with Villeneuve winning, and before the next race he would find out who his replacement was. Yet again it seemed Damon was the last to know. He has one of his worst races of the season at Spa, finishing 5th. The good news though was that Michael Schumacher had done him a favour by winning the race and making Villeneuve settle for second. After the race, when Damon is back home, Frank Williams calls him and lets him know he was going to do what was best for the team, and that would be without Damon.
Damon Hill's future in Grand Prix motor racing has been thrown into doubt after his Renault Williams team announced he would not be driving for them next season.
It makes me more determined to win, and my only goal is to win the championship.
Damon, the world at large would expect you to feel hurt, downcast, angry, disillusioned. What are your feelings?
Well, I'm disappointed. I wouldn't say that I could be anything other than that. I was told the news on last Wednesday by Frank, and naturally I was very disappointed to hear the news.
Damon, some of the attitude to this decision that Frank's made almost seems to be that there's no life after Williams. Is that your attitude?
On reflection, it's maybe time I flew the nest. You know, I started there as a test driver and grown over these last 6 years, and I think that I have the opportunity now to explore other teams who I can bring my expertise to help develop a winning car.
Does it fire you up even more for Sunday?
I think there's extra motivation. There's always new twists and turns which provide extra motivation to win, but I don't need any more motivation. I've been motivated throughout the season to win races, and I think that the fact that I've won 7 of the last 13 races should speak for itself.
If not, would you quit?
I'm not a quitter, Ted.
I am extremely distressed for all sorts of reasons, one of which is that Damon is a personal friend of mine. The second is that I have to say I think he's been treated very badly by the team. If you think about what he's done in terms of being a test driver and developing the car, as I talk to you, he has won 20 Grand Prix and is likely to win the World Championship, and it seems a very poor return. But sadly, this sort of thing happens in Formula One, and sadly, it particularly seems to happen with Williams, because it happened with Nelson Piquet, it happened with Nigel Mansell, it happened with Alain Prost, admittedly for entirely different reasons. But Formula One is a very tough, ruthless, cruel business, and Damon has suffered.
Damon would make a good start at the Italian Grand Prix, but it did not end well, the only upside being that Villeneuve also didn't finish in the points. Damon could seal the title in Estoril, but Jack would take the win. They headed to the final race of the year, and Damon's final race with Williams.
Sorry, Adrian.
That's all right.
How'd you...
Really sorry.
Why? Because now you're going to have to go to Japan.
Yeah, well, yes. You should apologise about that. You're quite right.
Do you think you can engineer me to 1 point? Blimey. It's got to finish, hasn't it? That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Damon led the championship by 9 points, a huge lead, but if Damon didn't finish and Jacques won, Jacques would be world champion. Villeneuve would get pole, but Damon was right behind him, and Villeneuve would make an awful start and fall to 6th, whilst Damon led. And with a 9-point advantage, it was always going to be an uphill battle for Villeneuve, and he made it even harder for himself. Then, it became impossible.
Villeneuve, it's Villeneuve! Jacques Villeneuve is out of the race! Damon Hill is the world champion of 1996! He doesn't even have to finish the race. If he failed to finish the race, he would still be 9 World Championship points ahead of Jacques Villeneuve.
On lap 36 of 52 of the final race of the year, the championship was over. No matter what happened in the race now, Damon had done it. He was world champion of 1996. The champagne was opened by Georgie in the garage, but on track Damon still had a race to win, and knowing this was his last race for Williams, who knows if he'd ever have a chance of winning again. And of course, he did cross the line, allowing Murray Walker to say one of the most iconic commentary lines in the history of Formula One.
This is something that many people didn't think could possibly happen today. They thought Damon would drive a cautious race, but he fought. He fought from second on the grid. He passed Jacques Villeneuve. He took the lead. He stayed there. And Damon Hill exits the chicane and wins the Japanese Grand Prix. And I've got to stop because I've got a lump in my throat.
All too much. I'm sorry, I just can't really put it into words how I feel. I mean, I don't know. When I got the word that Jack was out, it threw me for a while because I just couldn't really sort of take it all in as I was driving. But I wanted to win the race for Williams, and so I'd like to dedicate this my final victory and my final drive with the Williams team, the Rothmans Williams Renault team, to everyone at Williams and also to Renault. But if you don't mind, I'll take the championship myself. Yeah, come and sit down. Yeah, have a seat.
I'm biting drinks.
There you go. Sante. Campai.
No way. You drink it?
Yeah, straight.
Straight down, come on, Jack.
Campai.
Not very nice. Achtung! Achtung!
We need to get Come home, dear. You're supposed to say, good day at the office.
Good day at the office.
You're not bad. Back to you later. Oh my god, my head. I don't get it, yeah.
What are you doing?
I was just getting the laundry because I knew I'd forget it.
Won the World Championship.
Yeah, but first things first.
Just lie down on the bed for a minute and sit still.
Whose jacket is
Think
that?
about what you've done. It's bold, isn't it?
Is it?
Lump.
Yes. Good, thank you. Good night.
And then he had one final victory in 1996.
BBC Sports Personality of the Year is a man who fulfilled his dream of becoming the Formula One champion of the world, just like his dad. Twice a runner-up, this year he made it to the top. Ladies and gentlemen, Damon Hill.
Well, I'm certainly not going to apologise for getting everyone out of bed this time. I'm enormously proud to receive this award. To stand here amongst the cream of our country's sportsmen is a very humbling experience, and I feel, as I said, immensely proud to be here and to receive the award. I think a lot of credit has to go to the BBC Grand Prix team for covering the sport so incredibly well over the last 20 years and this season as well, especially. And of course, the incredible Murray Walker himself, who adds that something else to the coverage. But of course, it is the viewers that vote for this, and I'd really like to thank them and everyone who voted for me. Big, big thank you. And it really has made my year for me, and I'm extremely thankful and proud. Thank you very much indeed.
It's a Murray, it's a pizza. Mmm!
And here comes the pasta.
I
forgot what I was supposed to be saying. There's pizza everywhere. Hill spun his pizza through 360 degrees, or even 180 degrees.
I knew that.
And here comes the pizza.
It's a pasta Murray.
Congratulations, Damon. We knew you'd do it in the end.
When it came to a seat for 1997, Damon knew that Adrian Newey would be leaving Williams to join McLaren and wanted to put himself in with a chance of the McLaren seat for 1998, so he knew he wanted a one-year contract. The only teams that would offer him this were Arrows or the new team on the grid, Stewart, owned by Jackie Stewart. Damon was incredibly tempted by Stewart, but felt that he needed to be at a team with more experience, so elected to join Arrows. The Arrows team had been the footwork team for the previous 6 seasons, but had only managed to get 1 point in the 1996 season thanks to Jos Verstappen at the Argentinian Grand Prix. Although they had designer John Barnard joining the team, the man who had designed for McLaren, Ferrari and Benetton, including the cars which would bring McLaren 3 drivers' titles between 1984 and 1986. Expectations were low for Arrows, and yet they were still too high, as the Arrows car was hopeless. For the first race of 1997, Damon qualifies 20th, nearly 5.5 seconds slower than the pole time set by Jacques Villeneuve in the Williams. And to add an extra sting to it, it was a Williams front row lockout, with Fretson getting second on his first race for the team. But for Damon, it would get even worse, as he didn't even start the race due to a throttle issue. In fact, he wouldn't finish any of the first 5 races. His first finish came at the Canadian Grand Prix with a 9th place, which at the time gave him 0 points. His first point would come at Silverstone with 6th, which gave him 1. The Arrow's team used Bridgestone tyres, which were different from the Goodyear that the majority of the grid were using, which normally didn't make a huge difference for them, but for one weekend it would. For the Hungarian Grand Prix, Goodyear had overcooked their tyres, whereas the Bridgestones worked like a charm. And as the weekend went on, the Arrows started to perform well. And at the end of qualifying, Damon was third, just 3 tenths off of Schumacher in the Ferrari, and just under 2 tenths off Villeneuve in second. Damon's best qualifying of the season before this was 9th, and this was only the second time he had ended qualifying in the top 10. Another bad start for Villeneuve allows Hill to take second.
Damon Hill passes Villeneuve, and Eddie Irvine is up into third position. Damon Hill moves across and blocks him. Hakkinen is up, and Villeneuve has dropped back several places, exactly the same as happened to Villeneuve as happened to Hill last year. Damon is in second place.
And here we are again, Schumacher and Hill. But surely the Arrows would not have the ability to challenge Schumacher and the Ferrari.
Yes, Damon Hill almost looked as though he nudged the Ferrari. Move over, you can feel him saying in the cockpit. I'm going through, and Damon Hill leads. Oh boy, Damon Hill goes into the lead of the Hungarian Grand Prix.
He continued to lead all the way to the final lap of the race, where it looked like Hill and Arrows were about to do the impossible and take one of the biggest shock victories in the history of Formula One. Then, a hydraulics issue, and Damon is stuck in 5th gear with the engine on turnover. But the car was still moving, and Damon was still in the lead, with his former teammate Villeneuve now chasing him down with 1 lap to go.
Damon Hill is now on his 76th lap out of 77. It's a nail-biting situation with Villeneuve gaining. 24 seconds is the gap now between the A-Lings. Slowing Damon Hill, there he is.
Oh no, he's cruising, Murray. He's absolutely cruising. He's obviously lost a lot of use of the throttle or something. Look, he's going very, very slowly.
This is quite incredible. Damon Hill is round turn 5 in this 14-turn race. Now he's running quite quickly as far as an ordinary motorist is concerned, but paralytically slow as far as Formula One is concerned. And all the time, Jacques Villeneuve, who will know from his headphones and from the radio that he's got his 5th Grand Prix victory potentially in his hands, is obliterating the space between him. Now there is the Prost of Trulli, who has already been lapped by Damon Hill, gaining on the Arrows.
Damon's got an intermittent throttle. You can see him every so often. The car just takes off. Mind you don't turn in, Damon. His concentration would not be on that back marker. He's got away with that. This is the last lap. He's shaking the car around in an attempt to try to connect up some electrical connector or something like that to give him his throttle back. He moves into the last lap of the race. Oh no, I don't think he's going to make it. I don't think he's going to be fast enough on the last lap. He's losing so much time.
Gerhard Berger, who was 9th position and lapped, goes past Damon Hill, who's into the last 2 miles of the Hungarian Grand Prix, with Jacques Villeneuve burying his throttle and obliterating the space
he's
between
right behind
the two.
him, look. Here comes Villeneuve.
Villeneuve's going to take the lead. Villeneuve is going to win the Hungarian Grand Prix. Oh, Damon, the whole of the world's heart will go. Villeneuve takes to the grass. Jacques Villeneuve into turn 14 for the last time. Wins the Hungarian Grand Prix, and he wins it for the 2nd year in succession. And I don't mean this unkindly. Whilst he is absolutely and justifiably overjoyed, Damon was the man who made a wonderful, wonderful race out of it.
Damon had to settle for 2nd, but still proved all the doubters wrong. And for all those who had said he had only won because he had the best car, well, that weekend he nearly won in the worst car. For many, this is the Damon Hill race. The moment of nearly, the moment he almost did the impossible. But the most important thing for Damon, after what had been an awful season, it reminded him that racing is supposed to be fun, as he looked ahead to 1998. One last last highlight came in qualifying for the European Grand Prix of 1997, when Damon was just 0.058 off of the pole time. Unfortunately for Damon though, this was the race where Villeneuve, Schumacher and Fretson all had the exact same time for pole. So despite being so close, Damon would actually start in 4th, and again wouldn't finish the race thanks to a gearbox issue. A welcome end to a painful season, which saw Damon score 7 points, 6 of them coming from the Hungarian Grand Prix. But now was time to try and sort out a seat for 98, his number one option being McLaren. Adrian knew he was now there after he had left Williams due to how both Mansell and Hill had been treated by Frank, but Damon had to win over Ron Dennis. McLaren had the duo of Mika Häkkinen and David Coulthard, and there was no way that Ron was getting rid of Mika, so Damon had to persuade Ron to get rid of his old teammate. Ron Dennis made Damon an offer for the seat in 1998, but said that Damon would only get paid if he won races. $1 million per race win was the offer he got, no other wage. So if Damon didn't win, he didn't get paid. Damon didn't think long on the contract. He said thanks, but no thanks. This left his options as staying at Arrows or moving to Sauber, Prost or Jordan. Sauber offered him £1 million per race. Not only did he not have to win the race, he wouldn't even have to finish to earn the million, but Jordan were a team that he thought had a lot of potential. He'd also worked with Eddie Jordan briefly in Formula 3000, and it was an Irish team, and Damon had been living in Dublin for a few years now, and the Irish people had made him feel incredibly welcome. So he signed a deal with Jordan, a 2-year deal, the first deal over 1 year that he'd ever had in Formula 1, and he knew it was his last.
Not alone have we gained a current world champion, but a lead guitarist, which actually is very important to me.
Growing up watching his dad compete in Formula 1 for far too long, he'd always told himself he would not compete over the age of 39. And he had celebrated his 37th birthday towards the end of the 1997 season. So, it was 2 more years of Formula 1 with Jordan, but would it end with a bang or with a whimper? There was one more problem though, because at Jordan in 1998, his teammate would be Schumacher. Ralf Schumacher. Jordan had been on the F1 grid since 1991 and had had some mixed results. Their debut season also saw them give the first race to Michael Schumacher before losing him to Benetton at the very next race. Since then they had featured drivers such as Rubens Barrichello, Eddie Irvine and Giancarlo Fisichella, but they seemed to have reached a glass ceiling. They had had 1 pole position thanks to Barrichello at the 1994 Belgian Grand Prix, and they'd had 6 podiums, including 3 in the previous season, but they were not able to get that elusive win, and seemed to be stuck in 5th place in the Constructors, where they had finished in the previous 2 years. The signing of Damon was seen as a huge acquisition, as they attempt to smash that glass ceiling and get the race win. It was a mixed start to the year. Damon would become a father again with the birth of his daughter Rosie, but on track it was difficult. Damon goes the first 10 races pointless, including 4 mechanical retirements. He only finished 5 of the first 10 races, and in one of them he got disqualified due to a weight infringement. Then at the German Grand Prix, everything starts to change, as Damon just misses out on a podium, finishing 4th, about 5 seconds behind Jacques Villeneuve in 3rd. Then at the next race in Hungary, it's another 4th, 11 seconds behind Villeneuve, who again was 3rd. Then comes Spa, and he qualifies 3rd with just the McLarens ahead of him. On race day, the rain was falling, and the start would be one of the most chaotic in the history of the sport.
Yes, yes, it's go! And Coulthard drags. Häkkinen gets away well. Look at Eddie Irvine coming up on the inside. Villeneuve goes up into 2nd position. Schumacher is down into about 6th position. Bad start by the Ferrari. Great start by Eddie Irvine. Villeneuve, look at Villeneuve, and into the wall. Who was that?
Coulthard in the wall.
David Coulthard into the wall. They'll stop the race.
They'll have to red flag
this. Terrible. Look, this is quite appalling. This is the worst start for a Grand Prix that I have ever seen in the whole of my life.
Around an hour later the race would restart with many teams in their spare cars. it would be a bad start for both McLarens, which allowed Damon to take the lead, while Mika's race would be over with a crash between him and Johnny Herbert bringing out the safety car.
Damon Hill has made an excellent start and leads! Damon Hill gets ahead of everybody at last source. Schumacher going round the outside.
Oh, and Häkkinen spun.
Spinning Häkkinen. Schumacher hit Häkkinen. And Herbert has hit Häkkinen.
So at the front, it was Damon leading the race for the first time since Hungary last year. And who else would be behind him but Michael Schumacher. Schumacher passes Damon and starts to pull away. It looks like Damon again would have to settle for second place. That was until Schumacher tried to lap a struggling David Coulthard.
Let's not forget that David Coulthard in these appalling conditions.
Oh God! Michael Schumacher hits David Coulthard and is out of the Belgian Grand Prix. Maybe he should have been a bit more circumspect about trying to pass him, but he is out. Now what is he up to? He's storming down the pit lane, presumably to go. Look at him! He's saying, "I'm going to the stewards." He's James, can you enlighten? He's going to Coulthard. He's going to have it out with David Coulthard.
So after Schumacher had tried to fight DC, Damon was now in the lead once again. Late into the race, there is yet another crash, which brings out the safety car and eradicates Damon's lead of about 20 seconds to second place. Second place man now being his teammate, Ralf Schumacher. The Jordan team had never won a race. In fact, they'd only ever finished second twice. Damon hadn't won a race since becoming world champion, and Ralf had only ever had one podium. It was all very high stakes for everyone involved as they sat there in first and second. With a lot of teams who are used to being at the front, there are rules about racing each other for the win, as Damon had found out to his own expense. But at a team like Jordan, those rules didn't exist because they do not expect to be in the kind of situation where you are 1-2 in the last 12 laps of a race. Damon waited for the call to be made over the radio, but the call never arrived, and he decided he would have to make the call himself. He took the bull by the horns, and after years of waiting to be made the number one driver by Frank in Williams, he made himself the number one driver for Jordan that afternoon in Belgium.
I'm going to put something to you here, and I think you better listen to this. If we two race, we could end up with nothing. So it's up to Eddie. You've got to Eddie. We can come in. If we don't race each other, we've got an opportunity to get first and second. That's your choice.
Ralph, you cannot overtake Damon. Okay, that is team order. You cannot overtake Damon. You heard me before, didn't you, Ralph, about overtaking Damon? You heard that, didn't you? Get that, Ralph? Did you hear me? Ralph, acknowledge.
Yes, Sam.
He got the call back saying that Ralph would not fight him, although he didn't 100% believe it. And with Jean Alesi not too far behind, he still had to put his foot down.
Potentially historical Belgian Grand Prix, followed by Ralf Schumacher, past the scene of the enormous crash out into Eau Rouge, climbing out of Eau Rouge, which has taken so many people in the past. Zanardi in the Lotus, Villeneuve on Friday, Salo on Saturday. This is where Schumacher and Damon Hill had their wheel bagging incident. Les Combes in 1994. Damon Hill turns into the right, turns into the left. The next corner is Malmedy, the right-hander. He's coming up towards Rivage at 160 miles an hour. He's coming down to the right-hander here, slows down to 65 miles an hour. He is 1/3 of the way round his last lap. He is in the lead. He is followed by Ralf Schumacher. Jordan lead. Jordan second. Mugen Honda engine first. Mugen Honda engine second. Goodyear tyres first, second, third, fourth with Frentzen, and Bridgestone are fifth and sixth with Deniz and Trulli. What a race.
Oh, and is it going to be well deserved? Damon really kept his head, made a perfect second start. The restart really played into his hands, got onto those, remember he got onto those intermediate tyres. The Jordan team coming to the pit wall, they're really going to enjoy this one. Jordan know how to party at the best of times, and tonight is going to be something absolutely incredible. Damon has driven a faultless race. He let He had to let Schumacher go in the early part, but he hasn't made any mistakes, and he's coming through to what I think is one of his best ever wins.
Get ready in Britain and Ireland, all round the world, to stand up and cheer as Damon Hill comes home within sight of victory at the Belgian Grand Prix. His 22nd victory into the bus stop. He is yards away from the finish, followed by his teammate Ralf Schumacher. And Damon Hill wins in Belgium. Fantastic! Schumacher second, a Lacey third.
This was potentially the most joyful of all Damon's wins, and he thought as he got to the podium about the work he had done previously with his coach about body language. So as he got to the podium, he decided to celebrate like Michael Schumacher and leapt onto the top step.
Of 1998, yes!
Although maybe not everyone was joyful. After the race, Michael Schumacher cornered Eddie Jordan as he was celebrating and told him that what he'd done to his brother was unfair, and that Ralf would be leaving the team at the end of the year. From there on, results weren't as good, but still very strong, picking up points at every race, and annoying Michael Schumacher one or two times along the way.
They couldn't keep me for long, so why not leave me through and let me drive my race? I have to say thanks for all those guys. Obviously, Damon naturally is not my best friend and would make rather things very difficult and a little bit easier. But in the end of the day, I don't care.
Hill also pulled off an audacious move on Fretson at the last race of the year to pick up 4th. But Hill and Fretson would get to know each other a hell of a lot better in 1999, as they would become teammates.
Joining Zanardi at Williams next season is Ralf Schumacher, who was exchanged by Jordan for Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Eddie and Heinz-Harald are old acquaintances.
He drove here for us in 1990 in Formula 3000. We've known him for a long time, and we're very pleased that he's back with us.
1999 would be Hill's final year in Formula 1. He hadn't announced it to the public, but he knew it himself. Although 1999 would be tough, and Damon thought that maybe he should have stopped in 98, but he had always known that 99 would be the final year. Something in him changed, and all of it became a bit pointless, as he started to think about his life after racing, and he no longer seemed to have the same commitment. Bernie Ecclestone had told him that as soon as drivers see that big red stoplight in their head, that they should stop immediately. Mix this in with F1's move to groove tyres, which he really struggled with, and it all added up to a season to forget. And he thought about not even making it to the end of the season, but finishing at his home race at the British Grand Prix. It was the first race he'd qualified for 7 years prior in the Brabham, and it was the race where his father had retired. There was the French Grand Prix before that though, in the wet, and where Damon had once excelled in the rain, like the win for Jordan in Spa or the great drive in Japan in '94, he now found himself terrified and shocked that they were made to drive in these conditions. He'd qualified 18th, and after struggling around at the back of the pack, his car gave up. Meanwhile, his teammate had won the race, taking Jordan's second race win ever. Fretson was having a great time, and slowly over the course of the season would pull himself into a shock title challenge in the Jordan, picking up another win at the Italian Grand Prix. But for Damon, the big red light was on, and it was time to stop. After the French Grand Prix, he told Eddie Jordan that the British race would be the last one. But it was not meant to be. Eddie stated that they had a contract in place and Damon would have to honour it, or face massive financial consequences. Damon would have to see out the rest of the season under constant questions about his retirement, being asked to him by the media and his fellow drivers.
If I wasn't enjoying it and I didn't think I could be competitive, then I think it was time to stop. And I think those two criteria were met this year.
So there's a number of circuits that are coming to his advantage. Silverstone, Spa, of course, where he won with us. But overall, I think Damon is committed to Jordan, and Jordan is committed to him. And it's my opinion at this stage. I mean, I've heard what he said, but I still believe that it's his intention to finish the season with Jordan and finish on a high note.
I
want to do the very best I can for Eddie and the team.
I'm not going to have an announcement from me. I'm just here to get on with the race weekend, not making any announcements about any other things that concern driving or not driving.
Damon's reticence on the subject points to the possibility that he's not yet made up his mind.
Well, I don't know if Damon Hill's retiring. And I don't think you know it, Damon Hill's retiring. And I'm not even sure Damon knows if he's retiring.
I hope that he has a race meeting this weekend which persuades him that he should see the season out.
Not all would agree.
Once you're not hungry anymore, then you should stop. I think, if he retires, the sport will miss him.
On top of this, the red light in his head was brighter and brighter. He drove the final 9 races of the season absolutely terrified. During the British Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher crashed and broke his leg, and Damon was terrified that he was going to crash, terrified that he was going to get hurt, terrified that he could hurt someone else, terrified that he was going to die, terrified that he was going to leave his children in the exact same situation that his father had left him, but he couldn't do anything about it. As if he walked away, the legal repercussions were equally as terrifying, as he thought it could leave him with nothing, just as the legal battle after his father's death had left him as a child. He was consistently having panic attacks, and at one point thought he was going to have a heart attack. Damon finally gets to his final race at Suzuka, the circuit that saw him become a world champion 3 years earlier. The circuit where he'd been possessed by the spirit of Ayrton Senna 2 years before that. Throughout his career, Damon had achieved many things that his father had achieved. He'd won races and a world title. He also hadn't achieved things that his father had. His dad had won 2 world titles, he'd completed the Triple Crown. But on the 31st of October, 1999, at the Suzuka International Racing Course, on lap 21 of 53 of the Japanese Grand Prix, Damon Hill would quietly achieve one thing his father had never been able to do. The cameras didn't even catch it in the race, but Damon Hill drives into the pit lane, parks up his car, and walks away. Damon Hill walked away from Formula One as a world champion, and more importantly, he had his family at home, 4 children and a loving wife. In the years after he was finished racing, he suffered from depression, leading from unresolved issues after his father's death. Racing had distracted him, and now that was gone, it all came back. Eventually he even went to therapy. During his career, he struggled with the thoughts of if he actually was a racing driver, or just someone tasked with a mission to do due to his father's death, and once that was done, he could then be his true self. After his F1 career was over, the Hills left their home in Dublin and moved back to England. They bought a house that needed a lot of work done for it. The previous owner hadn't touched it since the year 1975, the year Graham Hill had died. Damon describes working on that house as restoring the life that had been shattered in that accident. Damon avoids all forms of motorsport out of fear that he would die post F1 retirement like his dad had done, and leave his family in the same situation he'd been in as a child. He does drive a GP Masters 2-seater car with his son Josh, GP Masters being a short-lived racing series for retired Formula One drivers. They'd hoped Damon would join, but he said no, although it did inspire Josh Hill to start his own racing career. He writes a book called Watching the Wheels. Whilst that title was an obvious racing pun, it was actually named after John Lennon's record about dealing with life after fame when he retired from music for 5 years to raise his son Sean. Damon is now older than his father ever was, and he has made enough money from his career to look after his entire family, including his mother. He does the school run, he goes to sports day, he grows his hair long, he listens to Radio 4. He gets a first-class literature degree with the Open University. He succeeds Jackie Stewart as the president of the British Racing Drivers Club at Jackie's request. He starts a group called Halo, which supports young adults with learning difficulties.
Halo, and it's to do with learning disabilities. So people with learning disabilities are creating lots of activities for them to do, and nurturing, we call it nurturing independence. So the money is going to go to a very, very worthy cause. So I'd be very, very glad if you could contribute to supporting the Halo charity.
And starts the Damon Hill Karting Challenge to help raise funds for the charity. He recently walked away from Sky Sports F1 where he did analysis for 13 seasons and now works with BBC Radio 5 Live. He's also gotten to drive the cars that his dad won his world titles with, and in one event drove them side by side with his son Josh. And on the 26th of April 2026, Josh and his partner announced that they were expecting a baby, making Damon a grandfather for the first time. The one regret he has is not getting to know Michael Schumacher better after his racing career was over. They would see each other occasionally and got on really well, and now after Michael's accident, that chance is probably over. Much like Senna and Prost, maybe they spent too much time being rivals and no time being friends, and when their time as rivals was over, there wasn't enough time to be friends. When I started this, I thought I was going to make a video pointing out the similarities between Graham and Damon Hill, but the more and more research I found, the more I found the differences. I get the feeling that if his dad hadn't have died, Damon Hill would have lived a normal life and had a normal job. Well, as normal as it can be, being the son of a Formula 1 world champion. That plane crash set Damon on a quest, but it wasn't a quest to fulfill some kind of stolen glory that his dad would never have achieved. By Damon's own admission, Graham Hill's career as a Formula 1 driver should have ended a few years earlier, and maybe his F1 team would have achieved something, but arguably Graham Hill was already one of the most successful racing drivers of all time, not only with his 2 world titles, but being the only driver ever to complete the Triple Crown. So if this quest was not for glory, then what was it for? I believe that this quest was for an ending, or at least a different ending. Thanks to Damon, the Hill story in Formula 1 no longer ends in a plane crash on a golf course, but now instead ends with the first ever son of a world champion to become a world champion. And once that quest had been achieved, Damon got to do the thing he was always truly destined to do. Go and be normal.
Yeah, I want to dedicate this race to the Hill family, whether you're past. Present. No future.
You know, regardless of the championship, I think Damon is a champion as a human being, because you know, motor racing really isn't everything in life. You know, I know it's a silly thing to say in a motor racing program, but, you know, in the end, we all get measured by some other statistic, and it's not just how many pole positions you get. And I think on that level, Damon is a great person, great human being, and already won many championships.